the section on, there's two sections, and one of them just got repeated.
Yeah.
So it's in there twice, and we want that one, it's a shorter one. But then the one that you wanted just disappears.
But if you went like two sections more, like the sewer one, which was pretty clear.
Pretty clear, yeah.
Now there's something not right here.
Sometimes you gotta look back before you read it to see it in context. Okay, I know what to do.
I thought you
Yeah,
did
so
it.
it should be all right.
You having all those and
Yeah.
maybe some
Well,
more.
you had taken a screenshot or something.
I had an older
So-
version and I saw that.
Yeah.
Sent that, and I just had that like.
Well, if they're, you know, if they're just like one or two and easy to point out,
Yeah.
I think they usually come in.
But I haven't, no one's had to look at that code in a while.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I said you get a, so, and there are, as you know better than I do, there are those circumstances all over town.
Yeah.
Where little arrangements, that have been made or.
And then, yeah, and I was like, I gotta look this one up, and then I looked it up, and I was like, this isn't right.
Yeah, weird.
Okay, good.
Yeah, all good. Oh, he's got his motion, look at that.
Yes.
Motion? You'll make the motion, by the way, this time is readable, so it's just
Everything,
a giant run-on sentence.
just always
A
there.
giant run-on sentence.
Perfect,
And then hand it to me and I'll hand it to Lynette, look at that.
perfect.
Jennifer Diosky.
Yeah, 'cause I read this first and then
you, then Lynette read that, that's the deal. That's one's, one-stop shopping, right?
Yeah, 'cause this time we're gonna have some.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll start on there.
I think we should be hard on that.
Yes. Yeah. Always, the better the worker, the harder I've always been on.
Yeah.
They always say, don't be good at using a shovel because that's all you ever do. I disagree, I never, my guy's always a shovel that I would use too.
I've never heard
But I've seen people become that position, it's like, they're like, oh, you do it because you do the best job.
that. It was a shovel, but I grew up.
And I just wanted to let you know, under Ronnie's thing, what, it's just code on the agenda. It's really, first reading of ours. Right,
You probably were aware of this mention in it.
didn't.
Because I grew up in the country when something crazy.
Okay, we had that earlier.
I lived in a trailer. Then we lived in one of the car garage. That's the house.
That is so cool.
Of course, you're first on the agenda, you got home.
I was. Last week, we were out. So I was like, well, I know we got this, but I was sure, so I was gonna probably first in the door.
We were the hired hands, you know, you're the kids, there's no question. You will come.
Yeah.
We had, first of all, we had. Job every night after school, we had to drill 3 feet. And you start with the arm, and then when you get water, you put up the tripod and you say a sandbar.
Gotcha.
And we had a tractor, and we got to run the tractor to pull the sandbar up, you know? If you run the tractor, the sandbar was on a big cable and went up to the pole. Because it was more fun to run the tractor.
Of course, yeah. The equipment.
But then you just, you take sandbar and you jiggle it up and down, it's got a little tractor thing in the bottom, and you haul the sand out and perforated pipe, 6 inches. You sell the pipe. We can water 25, and my guess is almost 25 people.
Makes sense.
And that will produce water. It was groundwater just south of the arsenal. It was 1962, before they realized it was a super fun site. And we drank the water untested, and maybe that tells you a lot about me.
But look at some of these other countries.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know, sometimes if we're better at that, I mean, look at how particular we are with that, but yet we still have McDonald's right down the street. And if you read on their food, it's scary. You know?
But I'm forever grateful that I had that upbringing because, I can use tools, and tools are important, I can fix things and,
But all the fun stuff too, like when I was younger, I would be a carpenter. Goes for both, same thing with my parents building stuff, but then clubhouses, grams.
Yeah.
And it was cool when your buddies are like, you know how to build it, you build it. It's like, heck yeah.
And you're just not at the mercy of getting on in the yellow pages, try to find
Oh,
somebody
but I miss it.
to do that, you know?
Yeah, up here, it's so hard. I mean, I get calls all the time, I just don't have enough time. It's crazy.
I don't do much electrical. You know, I'm wise enough to not, because, you know, that's, you know, plumbing, sure, you know, all the sewer, you know. Yeah.
Plumbing, water leak, electric,
Yeah.
burn your house down.
Yeah, plumbing, you can see what's wrong and fix it. You know, and you can see that the thing doesn't fit the way, you got a adapter or straight out something. But with electricity, you can't see it.
No.
And,
Until it works.
and I just, so I do draw the line at that, I do my electricity. It's pretty much everything else I can do. You know.
So I ran a lot of wire, my dad was an electrician growing up, and I was supposed to be an electrician, I'm like, I love sticking my fingers in the pots.
Did you put your finger in your mouth first and check it like that?
You remember back in the '70s, the little thing where you put your finger in it, you wound it up? You remember that? It would shock you. It was kind of like a toy back then, but I would never take mine out. I would last the longest out of my buddies. You remember that?
He walks across hot coals too and stands there for the extra impact, you know, nails, yeah.
I never liked the hot stuff.
Does Bettina know this about you?
Was the electric fixer our first fixer of her house we got when we got married? You had that, it was a cross space ship, and the panel was down in the cross space, so you had to walk all the way around the house. So I rewired that house without ever turning off any breakers. And I'd be like, ow, she's like, go turn off the breaker. I'm like, no.
Too much trouble.
And after it was done, I was like, why didn't you turn off the breaker for me? You know I was gonna electrocute myself.
So you're relying on your wife to make up for it.
Yeah.
So in other words, you have a lot of life insurance policies
I
on
think
you,
she had a
huh?
good plan on me. But more for too much other stuff, but.
Greetings, how are you?
We enjoyed this all day, we went up to Vanilla this morning.
Oh, yeah, you actually had a day off today? You weren't like putting in time with the children?
Not with the children. No, we,
Hi, hello.
Good, how are you? Good. What's your name? Kelsey and Levi Weber. I'm sorry? Kelsey and Levi Weber. Kelsey and Levi Weber, right? Yes. Okay. Do you guys want to speak under audience business?
Yes, under ordinance 8.
Okay. So that will come later. Yeah, that's on our agenda towards the end. Okay. So. Okay. Yep.
Don't see any of them, maybe.
I don't know how long it's gonna take to get it.
You want to see them? Yeah.
Of course.
Better work on this.
All the time.
That's right, Ryan, talk fast.
I just want a few yeses and.
But it's a little like.
Pretty simple.
Let me look at my questions now and see if we can't expedite.
The judges,
There's a lot of
judges.
It did seem like it was much.
And then.
Yeah.
Brian, yeah, Brian.
It'll be about 3 hours.
Oh, God.
Hey, what's the guy that lives up the?
Work session.
Saxon, that works for you.
Yeah.
I guess it's Eric, yeah. I told him he's doing an awesome job. I always get confused. I know he works, so I always end up saying for Road and Bridge. But tell him I know what he does, and I think he does awesome. He's like a hard worker, so. I think he got a better next at Road and Bridge, and I was
Here.
promising. No, it was a couple weeks ago, I was 4 hours.
I did go back to the last meeting.
When they approved that.
That was a pretty long.
It's like, wow.
nothing really looks like more on you water.
It's like a mini plat. So October 1st, I'm putting in for a month. Yeah, they're like, well, so, no, because I have about 40 days. But, I'm gonna do gift certificate, it'll be on the October meeting on the 17th. And then, if they say you shouldn't drive for, at least, especially that, for a month. I'll be at the hospital that particular time.
I thought you went to their house.
No. Well, maybe for the next one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm not gonna, because the new guy starts the day before. And I'm like, okay, dude, I'm not gonna hold your hand. And I need to get things done, I'm putting it off. Which isn't really good either.
But if you do that, just let me know.
TJ had to watch me after I drive up from Denver and had to check out, get out of the car.
You can never find a vehicle that's at quite the right height to make that transition. Either trucks are too high or too low, there's nothing where you just like
My
slide.
buddy's Jeep, he's watching me try to get into the anything, and it's like, really good.
There's a valley, because it used to be, Tony, let's just say we get.
Okay. Okay, I'm staying my red forever.
Thank you.
All black today, very.
Don't ever, never.
Actually,
Make a big deck.
You look good.
It's a fun thing. Downsize.
Three smaller ones, and I went
You
through
get
that.
good in New York, you
And
look
I thought when I
good.
got the steps. I said, now, I'm gonna wait till some more sun, when I, just gotta get empty that 5-gallon stain, solid colored
The
stain.
low parts are. Oh, little architect, so cute, you know, this person at the contractor who put this, you know, harbor, I guess. If you just line the gaps between the boards.
Yeah, they're gonna be.
5 more inches, so I could get it welded, because I can't, and I mean, I don't wanna go up this way, because I feel that's, I would feel.
Yeah.
But I was, I told others, whoever sees that again, I want to take some of those pieces.
They wanna break it down. It's a good thing.
That seems a lot of times. Take it off and throw it away.
Really? And I don't make it but it's like,
It's a long
it takes a
time.
long time. And then you get down to the last, and you realize you're missing a lot. And I've been walking the rail lane. Let's see, tune them.
That's all the go karts that. Took that up to the top of the hill. Went down and picked up this stuff.
I don't know what's in home right now, because it is night.
Right, she's not
gone. And Mary is on here, but she's not showing up.
Dan's not gonna make it.
Okay,
I just got a text.
thank you, but we're worried about John and Mary also.
I'm gonna try to send that right out.
There's sodas here.
He's here, he's right there.
Sodas here. Oh, there it is.
Wow, this is right,
I was trying to think.
Oh, wait, there's more attendees to those. It does Amber. Okay, we can go ahead, we've got a quorum, so I think I will. All right, it is 6:02 PM, and I'm gonna call this meeting of the Board of Selectmen of the Town of Georgetown to order. It is Tuesday, September 26th, 2023, and we'll go ahead and start with the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I will take roll call next. I am Lynette Kelsey, police judge. Rob Connell.
Here.
Ian Powell will not be here tonight. John Jennings may join us, but he is not here yet. Dwayne Gazinski.
Here.
Mary Smith.
here.
Rich Barrows.
Here.
And 4 is our quorum. Next, we have agenda approval. We've got a couple of things to add. Under agenda item number 1, we're adding another quote for compressor, so that will be agenda item number 1D. And we are changing, we're clarifying the subject of 1C. It is actually the first reading of ordinance number 8, series 2023. And then I have an update from the Wild Plan Partners meeting that we had today. So, and I'll do that under staff items. Anybody have anything else? If there are no other changes, who would like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended for September 26th, 2023.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as amended. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Motion passes. Audience business. Members of the audience have 5 minutes to present any matter of interest not already on the agenda. Apply to anybody that's here in the room. Okay, how about attendees, anybody? No, okay. Seeing none, we will move on. The payables were sent to you electronically, and there were hard copies in your boxes on Monday. Thank you, Mary Sims, for pulling that together. Any questions on the payables?
Sure.
These are dated from September 8th through September 21st, 2023. You got a question?
Sure, was it 1054, 690, reimbursement for swag and candy?
You don't want swag and candy?
Did you call it swag, Randy?
That's what I put on the reimbursement form. It was a public service event, C3 festival, and we took Polaroid mugshots for people. Stuff like that. It was a popular attraction, and big bowls of candy and other stuff, swaggish,
Swag.
little bottles of bubbles.
They caught my eye too.
Yeah, I had to ask.
Did you give him a stress donut?
Oh, I did.
Oh, you wait, we got better stuff. We're gonna up it for next year.
Everything's available. Everything they got rid of them all.
Okay.
That's what I did.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Had to ask.
Any other questions or comments on the payables?
I'll make a motion to approve the payables on September 8th through September 21st, 2023.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the payables. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Good. Motion carries. Next, we have the minutes from our last meeting, which was on September 12th, 2023. I've already given a few corrections to Jennifer. Does anybody have any?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for September 12th, 2023.
As
Amended. I'll second.
it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes as amended. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Next we have agenda item number 1, which is 4 different requests from Public Works Supervisor Brian Zabel.
Here we'll start, what's the first one?
First
Fire
one is the
hydrants.
fire hydrant quote.
Okay, this is a quote from Core Main. It's been our supplier for as long as I know, well, it used to not always be Core Main, they've changed names, but, this is for a quote for, 2 hydrants and 4, extension risers, to bring a few that are low in the ground and bring them up. And a tool to replace the inner, the guts, I guess, what you would say, instead of always having to dig a hydrant out, you can replace just all the seals and pull those out and put new seals in and save the seats a lot of times too. So that's what that quote is for.
Any questions for Ryan?
How many are we gonna do eventually?
The list is, we have 6 still from the 60s.
Okay,
Up there in the shop, right?
Got those
Yeah,
antique
so-
value, or those like?
So I'd like to replace, start replacing some of them, 30 from the 70s. And the rest of them are from the 80s or 90, and most of them are from 2001. As most of them are, as the town has expanded, that's kind of when they were all put in place. So I normally keep one in stock for an accident or someone that hits one or different things, so we can get that replaced as soon as possible. But this is for replacing 2 of the older ones at this point.
so are we looking at basic lifespan of a hydrant? I mean, what determines?
I would say
how
like
long
these, the 60s, those are, 2 of them are still pretty good.
Okay,
So they 50 years plus, I mean, hydrants really last. I mean, we flush them, we exercise them annually. You see that during, during when the snow melts and different things before we get into a dry season, but we exercise them annually, and so that's the most maintenance that we keep on them. And the fire authority has requested to raise a couple, and just to make them more accessible. The lower ones, we have put the flags on them, so they're down a little bit during the snow, but just to raise a couple here and there. Where are they?
Where are they going, these 2 that you were given?
One down by the warming hut.
Oh, got it, right?
That one.
Yeah, okay.
And the other one is, we're thinking doing the Spring Street one over there.
Right.
Are the 2 replacements.
Got
And those are both from the 60s.
and you have this already built into your budget?
This is in the budget.
Wonderful. Okay,
And those are gonna be raised as well? Those 2 that you're replacing, or are you raising a couple other ones?
We are going to the 6-foot ones instead of the 4.5-foot ones. So they are gonna just be standard and extra 18 inches.
Okay,
The new ones. They're gonna have they're gonna be a little bit higher, which is as it is.
okay.
Any other questions?
Do you want me to make up? a
I move to approve the bid proposal from Core Maine for $16,012.38 for the fire hydrant replacement program.
Okay, now you have it in first. It's been moved and seconded to approve this expense. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Wonderful. Next is the manhole quote.
Unlike the hydrants that we do in-house, the manholes are a little bit out of tools to spray these epoxy manholes and different things. These are 4 manholes that are, 3 of them are brick still. And so we're gonna seal those up for the infiltration, the IMI, as the water table comes up, they feed through those and now treat water at the wastewater foundation. And one at Warren Park down where we always used to have that bad drainage and stuff until we got that new French drain put in there. That manhole has been rehabbed in the past, and that one needs another whole new epoxy on it. It's sickening. I mean, you can just pop the manhole and water's just coming in, and that's going down to treatment. And so it's just a save money and maintenance on these manholes.
Okay.
So where are the 3 brick manholes?
2 on Main Street down here by Biddle, between like 7th and 9th. And then there's one all the way down on Clear Creek Drive by 15th Street, down by Triangle Park that was brick.
And then the one along the creek, is that the one that you're referring to by Whirlin? The
That one's
other
not
creek?
brick. That one's not brick. That one has been rehabbed before I was here. And that treatment, that whatever they had done has started to fail. And it just needs a whole coat of maintenance on that.
But it makes reference to one other manhole along the creek. Or isn't there one along the creek? Maybe it was on Clear Creek Drive, maybe that was, maybe that's,
It's 4.
Okay.
Line 48, they're 48 inches in diameter, and it's reworked and coated 4 benches and inverts 4 each. So it's 3 brick ones and 1 reed.
okay. And so in the proposal, it says that it doesn't include traffic control, construction, water, bonding, permits, blah, blah, blah. Do you see any of that kicking in? Or,
No, I don't.
I mean, I don't see those as major intersections that we need traffic control or anything, but I don't know how long it takes.
I don't think DRC has ever really gone, I mean, we've used them in the past, and I've never gotten to a point where they agended a bunch of extras onto a bid. So.
I know everybody's ears go up. Wow, they even do manholes?
Not our.
What was the one right before Clear Creek Drive? Was it? Not Orland Park. not
Like
Clear Creek
Triangle Park.
Drive. Thank you, yes.
So is this, has this been budgeted
And
too?
this is also in the budget.
Okay, see, we can't ask Mary, well, we can, but, you know. It's okay.
No.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
I believe there is a recommended motion in your packet if you.
I'll move to approve the bid proposal from DRC Construction Services for $14,680 to improve the town's collection system by resealing coating manholes within the system.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve this bid proposal for the manholes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we have First reading of ordinance number 8.
So we have, no, we have 1.5.
I think she added as, I'm sorry.
Yep, we're still on his stuff, but rather than referring it to it as code amendments, we're gonna call it what it is. Because it is an ordinance, amendment. It's ordinance number 8, series 2023. An ordinance repealing and reenacting Georgetown Municipal Code section 13.12.060 concerning private water systems. And you want to do that?
Go for it.
Okay, so this one, Ryan brought to me, found a discrepancy in our current code, and I kind of wrote it wrong on the agenda here. And so in the code, in our code book, in section 12.16.60, it gives, direction. And what it looks like, it appears, is that in the next section, right before that, in 50, so this is 60, that he's looking for guidance. In the previous section in 50, it was the exact same thing. And so when he brought it to me saying, I think this might be a typo or a copy and paste. And so what we did is we forwarded it to Jerry and asked him for clarification. And in the meantime, Ryan went back to the previous code book that he still had, and the language looked like it was just not brought to the regular code. So 50 and 60, section 50 and 60 were just copied. But what it looks like is section 60 was supposed to be the same words from the previous code. And so that's what we did. We brought back the same code that was in the previous, in the section 60, and then had Jared review it to make sure if this was a typo or not. And so this is what you see here in 13.12.60 is the actual verbiage that we want to use for the code.
Okay. Any other questions?
So who does this affect? I mean, I know private water systems, specifically, maybe not a who, but where? How many of these lots, areas do we have that would encounter this issue? Or we anticipate?
None.
None or one?
But the thing was, it wasn't clarified, because if you go to section 80, it talks about the sewage and how close, and if you need to be close, how close do you have to be to the town's water systems. But I was actually looking at a water project of a house that, how far is this house away from our main? And so I was measuring it off, and I wanted to see how far it needed to be, and they fell within the 400 feet, but it wasn't written in the code because it was copied until I came back to the order code book to see that they fell within the 400 feet that they have to tie into our system. But no, there is no one, and it just clarifies the homes in our community that are within 400 feet. If you're further than 400 feet, I think you have to have 4 acres or something like that, then you can have a well or something. But no one is outside that 400 feet. And so I had to look at that code for who knows how long. And when I did, that's when I saw that error.
And so within our existing town boundaries now, and as we develop additional lots, you don't see that we're going to get closer to someone who may have fallen into this?
There may have been at one point in time.
Well, I don't care about back then, I'm saying like,
And that's kind of probably how this was written.
Yeah, I think it's just a safeguard that we're trying to make sure that people, when they do a service line, what's the maximum distance that we want to allow them to connect into our main? And so in the previous code, it was very good specified, saying it has to be within 400 feet. But our current code, it was left off, it didn't even explain it. So it would usually match the sewer and the water. Within 400 feet, you can attach into the main. And so we're just trying to clarify that. So with everything new development, there's gonna be a main way closer than 400 feet. But we're just trying to make sure that that's in the code. It was brought back into the code. Yeah, it got, I mean, it just got left out somewhere in the codification process. It's in the code and just got erased and replaced with a duplicate of another.
So you have that old code book next to your old 1960s fire hydrants in your office?
I hang out all my old, for that very reason.
No, but here's another point of clarification. We went and looked at the ordinances to make sure this was not taken out specifically.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. It just was left off.
Okay,
So it was, there's no ordinance back there to say, oh, we're taking this part. We didn't find any of that.
okay.
All right.
I move to approve, ordinance number 8, series 2023.
On first reading.
On first reading,
I'll second it.
okay. So moved and seconded to approve ordinance number 8, series 2023, on first reading. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. And last but not least, the compressor quote.
Over the weekend, our air compressor, started on smoking, electrical, and pretty much the whole motor was shot. It's the oldest one we have. It's had 31,000 hours on it. None of the other compressors I have at the water plant or the sewer plant, they've all been redone, and most of them are less than 10,000 hours. So this one is original to when we built the plant in 2011. And it's the last one still standing, and they don't get it redone. So this is also budgeted. Me and Mary found that there is still money in the equipment maintenance to purchase a new air compressor for the wastewater.
And on that quote, you've got the budget line item numbers that all of these are.
Oh, I did it for all three of
Yes,
them,
yes, I see that. So just for public record purposes, this quote comes in at $12,409.96. And I notice it doesn't include installation, but
It does. I verified that today, and I did not get that quote updated to Jen.
but it will,
It is installation because it says up on top in the notes, says for compressor only, and then it says does not include, but then on line item 2, it does say installation.
okay,
So that was,
that confused.
I verified that today.
Okay. Good,
So this does include installation.
okay. We don't have a cover sheet for that because it came in late, so
I'll make a
We-
motion to approve, quote number 104381900-00 for $12,409.96
from the,
from the McGee Company.
Second.
okay, that was a simultaneous second.
Okay,
So
you can have it.
moved and seconded, and just for us. To approve this quote, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Or less.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Ryan.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have Clear Creek Fire Authority intergovernmental agreement funding. Kelly Dagan is here, he's our fire chief, and we also have Jeremy Jones. Thank you.
Thank you for doing this spot on your agenda. The cover letter I sent, we typically request the next year's contribution to the fire authority budget in September. This year I added a request to increase what would be the normal, going back just a little bit, the assessed valuation for this year at a rate of 4.569 mil equivalent of which the emergency services district mill levy is. So for all of the municipalities, we calculate the assessed valuation, times that amount, and that comes up with the contribution for next year's budget. So the assessed valuation for Georgetown went up this year. It did it for everybody. And the resulting contribution amount will be $149,560. A couple of years ago, we had discussions about raising our revenues and that mill levy equivalent to a 9 mil equivalent. And at the time, everybody agreed that they could make that work. And that would have been for this year's budget. And it didn't get approved to be on the ballot for the ESD, which is the unincorporated area of the county. And they have to vote on that to increase that mill levy. And that didn't happen, so we didn't hold everybody to that 9 mil for this budget year. That makes sense so far? So that 9 mil equivalent essentially doubles the contribution, and the amount would be $294,600. So it essentially doubles it. And we thought we would come in and ask all the municipalities to go ahead and increase to that 9 mil equivalent so that we could put on another 24/7 shift crew of 2 people to cover incidents better. And we've been essentially promising Idaho Springs to move the shift crew that we have currently to Idaho Springs, because that's 65% average pretty much of our call loads in Idaho Springs and that surrounding area. So doing that would move our shift crew from Dumont, which is in the center of the response area, to Idaho Springs, which would then increase the response time to Georgetown. So to offset that and to also in addition, reduce our response time to incidents in general, we would like to put on another crew of 2 people. Unfortunately, the reality of our system is that we have to hire people to respond. We used to depend on volunteers 100% for response in the county, and that started going away. Slowly started going away around 2014, 2015. We started to see a drop in our volunteer participation. So at that time, we started doing a volunteer shift program where we would pay volunteers to come sit for a shift for 12 hours, and we would pay them a $50 stipend. And that's grown over time, and during that time, we have come to a point where we only have down to 9 volunteers who live in the county, versus at one point where we had 70 or more. So to make up for that, we hired a crew to cover 24/7, and Jeremy and myself, we both live in county, so we respond with that crew on significant calls. And then during the day, we have 2 shift captains. They overlap 1 day a week, so. Costing a lot of money to do that. That's kind of a nutshell on the request tonight. Can go into detail on some of the paperwork that was attached to the request. And Jeremy's really good at the data portion of it, because he manages that. And he's made a map to show you where our response areas are. According to the graph that you got to show the response times.
For those that use mapping software, they got QR code value. So if you want to put like, you actually got access to the blow it up and do anything you want to do with it. There's a live updated map that it's my map of the agency that if we make changes on it or adjustments at any time and you renew it, you re-up it in your app, it'll show reflect all the changes. Well, there's a lot of data involved here, but for example, about 35% of the calls currently in Creek County are west of, essentially west of Lawson. It's rough statistics, which is what's called in your report there is called either there's Station 3, which is Empire Response Area, Station 8, which is Servo Response Area in the report. Station 4, which includes Georgetown city limits and the unincorporated area west of Silverblum. It's within that data. So West ESD in the report is the stuff essentially west of here out on Vanilla Pass, west of here on I-70. The stuff doesn't fall within the city limits of Empire or Silverblum. And the only reason we have Empire and Silverblum is a small box, it's in here, a small box is so I can pull data for just that locality, that municipality. Same reason we have Georgetown and Idaho Springs as the city limits. So I want to pull data. So the reason we do this, let's go full circle on this, just to give you guys a full background. So yeah, we were volunteers. I'll give you an example. And you came from Brushwood, so it was a volunteer department. And so we're doing a scenario. We do a cardiac event for any one of our residents in town. You call 911 and they dispatch the call. We're in a volunteer system at this point. So I'm a volunteer. I started out that way. Now I have to get dressed, I have to go to my vehicle, I have to drive to the station. So that's about a 10-minute average, right? So we had 10 minutes, now we're 10 minutes into the cardiac event, from the time that you call 911 until I arrive at the station. Now I'm gonna go on the station, I'm gonna get my gear on, I'm gonna start my truck and get out. That's about 3 minutes in reality, because I have to go to the door, get my gear, get on, and get out of the station. So now we're 13 minutes into this event. That's before we even pull the truck out of the station. The volunteer system. We want to have travel time of about 8 minutes or less by standard. Within the town, it's very easy to do that. So we'll say we have a 5-minute response time from there. So now we're 18 minutes before we arrive at your door. So that's an 18 minutes in the time that you go, I think that they're back, my loved one's having a heart attack to a fire unit would arrive at your front, at least at your driveway, in a volunteer system. All right, so we're gonna change that same scenario. We call 911, they get dispatched right away. Our turnout time, I think for 23, and the report is like 2 minutes and 16 seconds. That's the time from the time they get the dispatch says there's an emergency to the time the truck is pulling out of the bay. So our response times aren't us acknowledging the call, it's when the vehicle is in motion is when allowed to call out. So now we're 2 minutes and 16 seconds into that. We have a 5-minute travel time, we covered that. So now that same cardiac event has a crew that's trained, medically trained at the driveway at 7 minutes and 16 seconds. So that's why we ask for crews, and that's why it makes a difference. And I think we do a poor job of differentiating behind, we were volunteering in this county for 150 years and it was highly effective. But when we look at what we do, 76% of our calls have a medical component across the board. And the advantage of having that crew there for 7 minutes and 16 seconds versus 18 minutes is they also have a Lucas device, and I think Randy can attest, he's been around several of these Lucas CPR device uses. We've got a 48% return of spontaneous circulation in a cardiac event through the use of a Lucas device. National average is about 20% with CPR. That's a pretty drastic increase just by having that device. So now we have that device on scene in that 7 minutes also. So that it improves our cardiac survivability, you know, that's rated on, were they able to walk out of the hospital within 24 hours? That's how that's based off of. Now, did they get to the hospital alive? Did they get, within 24 hours, were they able to leave the medical care facility? So it's about 48% in the county, and that goes up and down. We've got, depending on what it is, it's pretty marked, and we've got about 8 within Georgetown. Cardiac events that historically would be non-survivable. This is the reality of CPR and response times. That these individuals are up and they're walking around, they're fully functional with no deficits, which is the goal of this program. So the reason we're asking for 9 mils is twofold. The first thing is that this came out of a conversation. I was gone somewhere and I came back into his office late day and said, if the municipalities go to 9 mils, can we put a second crew? Because I'm always looking for ways to improve service. He graciously said, let me figure it out. He did all the math on it. I appreciate he did that. And he said, yeah, we can do it. So we know the ESD didn't put a ballot initiative on last year, and we know we're going through the evaluation to see what that ballot initiative is, and I appreciate that. But the reality where we're going is we want to improve service and reduce response times within the entire district. This is a solution. And we also know and I can speak from another municipality in part of Idaho Springs, is there's a little bit of, the municipalities have to wait for the county to make a decision. And by the IJ, you don't have to do that. It's purely your decision as a town, as a municipality to pay above what the IGA says with the return of improved service. That's purely within your rights. It's not your fault as a municipality that the county commissioners are dragging their feet a little bit about 18, 19 months into them not making a decision either way, which directly affected, we would have approved in Georgetown last year, 24/7, that was the intent. And now we're a year later into that operation. So part of this kind of bias on my part is I'd like to see the power to a certain degree within the fire authority go back to municipalities. So if you look at the history of the fire authority prior to 1989, the municipal volunteer departments covered the entire county. And you had York Gulch and some small departments that covered a localized area within the community. But the bulk of the county and the bulk of 31 miles by 70 were covered by either Idaho Springs or Georgetown's general fund paying for a volunteer department and covering those costs. 1989, the ESD came about as a cost offset. How do you offset those expenses by the municipal partners? Fuel, maintenance, equipment, all that stuff. Which helped, but then we slowly have kind of drifted away from how it all started, where the municipality what started fire protection in the community, to more of an ESD base. They have the power because of Henderson. We know that they were putting a lot of money into paying the bulk of the expenses for fire protection. They kind of got the right at that point to make have a little more decision-making power than probably maybe they should have. Looking at the history, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying it's what happened. So we're making these requests, and we talked to Idaho Springs, and this was already kind of in play with Idaho Springs, and then several times I guess is already approved going to 9 mils. And the reason we ask this is twofold. A, we want to improve service because we know that there's a need throughout the community to shorten response time. That's been the goal of everything we do. And B, it is kind of, I guess, selfish to a certain degree to put the municipalities back into what historically was a power seat as far as making decisions that kind of got taken away from all the municipalities through the Henderson Plan. So it's twofold. That's what started this. I know 9 mils is a huge up. It's not actually a full double, but it is, it's 145,000 additional for you guys. But to put it in perspective, if all the municipalities go to 9 mils, that generates $340,279. That's with everybody going to 9 mils. That's the increase in contributions. The crew itself is $415,000. Just to give you what it costs it's 6 individuals. It's two per shift, 24/7. They're all Fire One state cert, national accreditation, they're all Fire One certified, they're all EMR or higher. I think you might have one EMR on the hiring mix, most of them are EMT or paramedic. So that's where we get the benefit from that. And so the increase for the municipalities doesn't cover the entire cost. But that's already allotted for the budget. The goal is just to make the request, put it out in the situation, and explain what it is currently in the county, and then how we want to look at improving services, and what that means really to the public that you guys serve and I serve. That's the end of the day, they're the customers for all of us, and we want to do the best job we can for the customers, whatever that means, right? That's across the board, and it's everything from the water department to whatever we do. We want to do a good job for the people who pay taxes, and do the best job we can 24/7, 7 days a week. So that's why we're coming today to make this request. It is budget time, and we understand how tight budgets are. We've been living that year over year. I mean, cutting our operation budget by a huge chunk every year, looking for efficiencies. And so we're in the same boat everybody is. The tax revenue, sales tax, all this stuff. We had about an hour of conversation about sales tax today, what it means to you guys as a municipality. We completely understand that. So that's why we're asking for this consideration, and then open to any kind of questions or clarification or anything. We would just have an open dialogue. I don't want to put Sonia, you go here. I want to be as transparent as we can, and have you understand where we're coming from. Ask all the questions you probably wanted to ask and you never had the opportunity to ask, just so we're all on the same page as we work through this process, especially over the next several years. Whatever the agency works into, whether it's Title 32 or stations, IGA, whatever that turns out in the evaluation, we just want to be as transparent as we can be with everything we're doing, up to including if you think service is slow, we want to hear about it.
Well, here's a question.
Yeah.
So incidents per station location, any explanation why in 21 and 22 it spiked?
So we spiked a little bit of medicals, COVID related. And you can also see, if you look in the data, you'll see a turnout time change. So I think 2020 or 2021 was like a little over 3 minutes of turnout time. It's really drastic from the lower climb to the big climb. Also COVID related. We had to make a shift where before you go out of the station, you have to put all of this stuff on to make sure we stay healthy, because when you have 6 firefighters, if you lose one for a 10-day period, it devastates your system. We survived the entire pandemic without losing anybody to COVID for duration. EMS was.
You improved your turnout.
Yeah, we won. Yeah, so 21, the protocol.
Pretty good.
But it's still not standard is 2 minutes. That's what we're going for. We're 2 minutes and 16 seconds in so far 23. Do I think we're ever going to be consistently below 2 minutes? Probably not, but that's the standard we're driving for. So yeah, the turnout time we're improving. If you look at the 8-minute response time, I think we're in the 30% range. That's been gradually going up. All of that is looking at operational improvement. How do we get there faster? How do we look at efficiencies? How do we make sure we don't have we miss an address? We're using some technology now and some other stuff that improves that. And there's a lot of training that goes in that. So we're not anywhere near where we want to be as far as an agency, as far as performance. We're probably light years away from where we want to end up in reality, but every year should be a little better than the year before. And we know we're gonna have hiccups and we're gonna make mistakes and we're gonna look at things and we probably can train on it.
Yeah, that's just fireball again. Couple of seconds.
Not opposed to firebolt, but if you look at the injury rates for firebolt, it's pretty alarming. We shouldn't be allowed with sharp objects, fire pole, there's a whole list of things we shouldn't be allowed to touch. We're almost like toddlers. In a lot of ways, because we hurt ourselves, so. No, I think we're constantly striving to get better. I took this job, he graciously made me an offer in 2020 during the pandemic. I took this job. I come from an industry where if you're not improving, you're not doing your job. Now I've got a lot of free time to do that here, which is why I came out of mining for 23 years doing data, down to how long is your truck parked and why is it not making production. I brought that into here and we look at everything with these guys. Response times, time on scene, maintenance costs, all of that, tire wear. They probably don't like to work for me because if your tire wear is excessive, you're not driving properly. Because it raises costs. But it all comes down to the end of the day, right? We have a finite amount of money to pay for costs and broken stuff. We need to reduce that every day of the operation, be more efficient, so. The often little soapbox, thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, no.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I was just saying, too, I love the efficiency of that. I also too, I think with modern times, modern technology, and it's funny, I just took my first ever CPR class. And I love that idea of it too, but when I think about it, I'm like, if the neighbor down the street, if they could choose to have me help or call you guys, they're gonna want you guys. When I think about that, and it's off of the data, like you said, and it is, and we talked about that in the CPR class too. You know, I mean, really, it's professionals and it's modern times, and with the different devices, EAD or something like that, that we learn how to use that just happen to be at the rec center. But I don't have one of those at my house, but how much that helps. I'm in favor of this. I mean, it's all budget stuff, but yeah, I mean, if I make that call, I want to be a professional, kind of over a volunteer. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be volunteers, and if something happens on the street, I feel like I at least can help somebody. But it's the professionals.
I don't want to see Craig Abramson over me. I want to see.
He sticks his fingers in electrical outlets, okay? Now, think about this. He's already admitted to it.
Just one. For example, and thank you for CPR, you just, to go further on that, for example, so we train the Loop Railroad. All their employees and ticket takers and everything are it's called Heart Saver. So CPR and full first aid. They see 245 to 260,000 visitors a year. They interact with a whole bunch of people that have medical emergencies in weird places. We started that 2 years ago. We just recertified everybody this year. They have Narcan on the train. I never thought I'd say that in my career. They're trained on it. They have Narcan. We've already restocked it once to make sure they have additional because they want to put it in more locations. It's kind of the reality, right? It's the world we live in. We have overdose issues across the board, usually unintentional. And use sometimes involving kids. So how do we get AEDs and people that are trained to use them and how we keep up with them? So we do that at no cost to the work, just so everybody knows. Because the benefit of them seeing one patient and having a positive interaction pays for what that program costs. One patient. They had 12 patients in the last 2 years, they had a positive outcome on. And that's diabetic issues, down to people falling down. It's pretty remarkable. So that's available. So just so you know, we provide CPR in the community for free to anybody who wants it. COVID completely shut that down in a weird way. But we have 7 CPR instructors. And what it costs me, 25 hours for a card in the community. Does that pay for itself if you help one person all day, every day? So that comes out of our training budget. And we've been doing that for over 2.5 years. We're kind of continuing that with us. So thanks for taking the class. It's pretty huge.
That's awesome too. It's, I mean, the experience in itself, just to think that, man, I could actually help somebody if something happens.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, why did I wait for 3 years?
I think we've all waited under for stuff and you take it and you, man, I should have done this when I was 25.
Heck, yeah. But it's amazing. It amazes me that they don't, it's one of those things like at school, high school, why don't we teach that stuff?
And that's what we do that now, that the high topper at the high school, we're co-instructors at, for example. So it's 17 years old, you can do CPR card.
That's awesome.
What is the downside of a 17-year-old having a CPR card? I can't find one.
No, exactly.
I think the downside of an 80-year-old person having a CPR card, right? Recognizing the signs of being able to take action right there pays for itself. The first time it happens.
So if the county puts this on the ballot, regardless of whether the municipalities support this or not,
Yes, ma'am.
in whatever time frame they do, let's be pie in the sky and say the next election.
The next election cycle, you're right.
It won't be, well, a year from now, year and a half from now. You'd see increased revenues for that.
You would.
And with that, you would be supporting these 3 crews or a full crew 24/7 times 3. And,
So thank you, this is perfect. So your contribution supports the crew. Currently, while we're waiting for the ESD decision, we've got capital projects essentially put on hold. Long-term, we're looking for a new station, here in Georgetown, down by the lake. We're looking for we've got the land, we're working the process for the new station in Idaho Springs. All of that essentially is kind of in limbo phase. It's really the grant funding, which is reasonably limited, as we all know, as we go through the DOLA funds and what's currently available, everybody's looking for that. So yeah, that's really what's being impacted by the ESD funds. That's why we're asking the municipalities to go to 9, then operationally, we've already reached the level we're looking for. And then if we're delayed on capital improvement for station replacements, because we don't need trucks. We did that in 2013, the fleet's been replaced. We do have a couple coming up in the next couple of years, they're gonna mile out. And when we think we've got reserves lined up to do that. So we want to hold reserves and not overspend the reserves, keep them in place, and then wait for the what the ESD value turned out to be. The second part of the ESD under the current IGA, if the ESD were to go to 12, for example, then per IGA, that's where it kind of backs you guys in the corner, then the mill equivalent becomes 12 for you guys. I don't see that happening. I'm not sure what the mill recommendation from the evaluation is going to be. The average is 12 to 18% across the entire state of Colorado for department combination departments, especially. Evergreen's like 13 mills, just for equivalent example, but their tax base is almost triple the tax base that we're talking about in Craig County. So when you look at that, so 13 mills from them gets them about $7.5 million, and 13 mills here doesn't come even close to about 50% of that, right?
but you're saying the 9 mills isn't gonna be enough to really cover what the crew costs
No,
you. So,
we can cover, we've got it in the budget to cover the 75,000. The difference between what the municipalities pay, which is that 340,000, and the 415, we've got that already figured out. That's why we didn't ask, we didn't come to, we want 10 mills. What we figured out is the $340,000 contribution from municipalities, we make up the 75 within the operations budget, which is there. We can put the crew on and we're in okay shape. A lot of that comes down to, we got a grant from this year, next year that offsets our mitigation crew. It's a $120,000 investment that we started last year, as we're near to that. So we're off, as we offset that expense with that 45,000, and we further offset that with wildland deployment funds, reimbursements that come back in. That also that makes up that 75,000 for the crew that we're talking about. So we've got some revenue sources that make up a small percentage. We just don't have revenue sources that make up the 415. Because if we had that, we wouldn't be here talking to you guys about 9 mills in any way, shape, or form, because we would already have it covered.
do you bill non-county residents, I suppose, for your responses?
No, we don't. And it's come up, and that's within the statutes, it's really hard to do. If you go back insurance, for those of us that remember when it was a no-fault insurance state, and we all paid a fortune for insurance, the advantage that we could bill for motor vehicle accidents because your insurance would pay for that. Now that we've gone to an at-fault state, you have to prove fault. And then you have to bill that individual at fault, which is a tedious process. We lost a lot of that billing, was that 5-6 years ago when it changed. So that's where the issue lies. And we know I-70 is an impact. It's 31,000 vehicles a year. I think Randy can attest to the impact of I-70 at any given snowstorm. And how do you recover the cost from that? But that's only about 30% of our total call load involves I-70. Biggest thing on I-70 is vehicle fires and semi-fires. We had 62 last year. 10 of that 62 was outside of Georgetown. So about 52 of them were within Silver Plume exit to the lake. I mean, I think everybody's seen 2 or 3 of those, if not 40 of them. Those are increasing year over year. The previous high was 43. I'm like, wow, that's a lot. Never had that. I ran the numbers for last year, just I was curious, and I was pretty shocked. So we beat 60. We've never beat 60 in the county. And the 10 outliers, yeah, exactly. We win. So that's increasing. we see more and more of those, and they all stop in the same spot, for some reason, right on the 228 bridge.
Yeah.
And that's another thing, so also advantages to having crews in Georgetown is if we shorten that response time, we've had 4 stop on the bridge. I don't think any of us can afford to lose a portion of that bridge for any duration, because I think the economic downturn for tax revenue for the town is catastrophic. On top of the 3 years of catastrophe you guys have already suffered through with Christmas market, people not coming to town, people not now it's slowly picking up, but I think it's not fully recovered, close to where it was to 2019 levels. Other than Amazon, some of the Amazon online offset some of that, but if you move down the numbers, there's probably still percentages behind the 2019 tax revenue. I know Idaho Springs is, when you really get into the details and separate out that tax, or to be generated in town, it's not pre-pandemic levels. It's close in some aspects, and there's certain ones that might exceed it, but it's still not good. And I think you guys are in the same situation. So that's where highway shutdowns and some of that stuff that are becoming a catastrophic event for a small town. Or staffing location doesn't make a huge difference on this.
But this is funding the crew that you're gonna move from Dumont to Idaho Springs.
No, this
So
is funding the crew that sits in Georgetown. But we're talking, the crew in Idaho Springs is our current crew that's funded. Idaho Springs, we have capacity to have our shifter, we have capacity for 4 people in Idaho Springs. So we'll move the bulk of the crew down there, which is our highest call load. The goal of this is to put 2 people 24/7 into the Georgetown Fire Station.
So what's your hireability? We know law enforcement has a hard time finding people who want to be police officers. What's on the
Actually,
fire end of
We're
it?
doing really well. We're low on our pay scale, which that's reality. But I've got more people on my eligible hiring list now than I'll have positions even with the 6.
So you're finding people that want to come on.
Yeah, I've got volunteer shifters that would love to have a job, but we don't have positions for it. It's a unique position to be in. We train them, we pay for all their training, and they're all highly trained, and some of them very well certified. And they work with us, or they work with us for grace to go to other departments, but we have a pretty robust hiring list. I think that's a shift. It's not to pick on law enforcement, it's that shift in people don't want to be in law enforcement as much as they're having a terrible time hiring because of liability.
You guys are heroes, we know that. I'm just asking if that.
No, it's not that. It's just kind of a shift, and even.
You always have been, you always will. Okay?
I wouldn't say that.
And we like the heroes, okay? That's good.
I don't think it's a hero thing. I think it's people looking for, it's a different shift. It's a 48-96 schedule. So it allows people, a lot of our guys have 2 jobs still. Or people have businesses, so it's conducive to that versus the 40-hour job that all of us probably sit in for most of our professional lives. Or we go, hey, it's a weekend, I don't want to work on my weekends.
So where do the other municipalities stand on this ask from you?
So right now, Idaho Springs is in the budget process. They were the biggest driver for going to 9. They wanted to go to 9 by themselves 2 years ago. Several plumes remarkably went, yeah, we'll go to 9. We thought that would be probably the hardest one. They're small, it's a small, small contribution, and then we're waiting on Empire to, we talked to them tomorrow night. We got some preliminary talk for the 10th, sorry.
And then Dumont and everybody else is really outside of that. They would fall into the county piece. And so when would we see this come to fruition? When do we see the guys in the station?
With your 2024 contributions to January 1, we would hire and have them in place on January 1st. The goal of this is they are in place at the first year, doing their job.
One thing that goes along with that is there's a federal grant, it's called the SAFER grant for hiring emergency responders. So we're going to apply for that. We can't apply for funding existing positions. It has to be for new positions. So we want to get that grant application in before we put a hard target date on putting people to work.
But that'll only fund for a certain period of time and then that'll run out. So that'll just kind of be that, okay.
Yeah, it's 35 years and you have to maintain the positions post that, so. we're looking at all sides of this. How do we get the positions, make sure they're funded? How do we look for cost offsets, through grants, or even enhancements, right? How do we add additional staff appropriately, where they're needed? Whether it's 3 in Georgetown, for example, versus 2. I'm not sure that we have to look at the numbers and see if that pans out appropriately. Probably would if we looked at the numbers, but.
So there's a couple other things that you probably should know. We've been deficit spending since 2022, so we're currently spending our reserve money for each operational year. If we get the municipalities all to go to the 9, those reserve funds are solvent until 2028. If we can get the ESD to come up, it wouldn't be next year, it would be the year after, then that would take us to 2031. And at some point during this period, between next year and then 2028, we're gonna have to look at another increase, and it's looking to be right around 12 mils total.
Do you have to do anything to your station house to accommodate the crews coming in?
Georgetown is essentially ready, other than
Kicking out the police
shower in
department?
the ladies' room. Yeah, he's pretty well set. I haven't had any complaints yet.
All we're really doing in Georgetown is they've got the bathroom in the hallway. We're gonna take the second bathroom, move the door, make that a unisex bathroom, take out a stall, put a shower in there. This is double, 2 showers in the facility, because EMS is in there also. Pretty simple, and Idaho Springs is a little more complicated. It's 4 rooms upstairs, and then change out some 1976 kitchen appliances and stuff. I like yellow, it's nice, it's works great, but we've done nothing on there besides linoleum in 1994 since the building was built. So same thing, it's a bathroom, it's a 1 shower stall, bathroom, unisex bathroom, it's what we've done to all our stations. And subdivide upstairs for some rooms, and so that's a little bigger project, but we're already moving towards that, and then it's moving a door and putting a shower in the Georgetown.
Do you have to do
Otherwise,
that before you get the manpower? Or can you do,
we're gonna do that anyways, because it's kind of goes in line with the subdividing upstairs for the police department. It makes sense to make that a unisex bathroom and add a shower, so it was already on the list of things to do. It was just a matter of when we got down that list, and then by subdividing was good, it kind of brought it to the top of the list, but it's something we have to do anyways. It makes that station more usable.
We just have to get the approval from the building official and the door in place, and Dwayne is online to do the work once that's approved by the building official.
so then tell me the math. So what does this do for the per $100,000 assessed valuation to everybody in here who's paying taxes?
For you as a taxpayer,
Well, not me, really him, but yeah. Bottom line.
Yeah, if you live in the municipalities, it has no effect on you. That mill levy that's assessed is only on property owners in the unincorporated area outside of the municipalities. And that increase has to be on the ballot. So any increases within the municipalities come out of the general fund, and then you decide where you're gonna pull from to cover that amount. So these increases do not affect the property owners within the municipality.
Unless the county bumps it up, and then we might only be talking about the additional 3.
No, if the county, say the county increased their mill levy and the towns didn't, it would still only be the unincorporated area property owners that are affected by that increase.
Unless Georgetown does it.
Right, I think that's
Officially takes
But
it.
then it comes out of the general fund, it doesn't come out of your property tax.
But to your point, I think it came out of too. If you currently look at the property taxes in all our municipalities, there is the line item that says fire protection or EMS, right? We've never had that. And this came up in Idaho Springs conversation too. do you as a municipality have the power to add that to, you know, to the voters and say, we want to add a property tax onto municipal property owners to cover it? 100%. It came up in Idaho Springs, again, he started the fire protection in this building in 1868, and we probably never fully looked at how it's funded seriously since then, 1978 Idaho Springs. So these are all things as a town, yeah, you can, if you want to add property tax, well, completely within your powers to do so. It's just, it's never been done. Similar to the mill levy, you talked about the mill levy in 1989. It was put in place for the ESD in 1989, and we've never touched it. There's not a single increase on that since 1989. Is anybody here looking, could you live off what you made in 1989? So that's essentially what we've done, as a fire authority. In the 99 became the fire authority, the mill levy didn't change. So we look at this history of, we've had the same tax revenue for this entire duration. And that's just because Henderson was making money for as long as they were. It didn't become an issue. It didn't become an issue really for anybody until the last couple of years when we started, let's look at this. And are we behind? Probably. If we're behind, but
The Henderson money has given us a reserve fund. We have just over 5 million in the bank for a reserve fund, and we're spending that down. It'll be gone in 2028. That Henderson money paid for 3 fire stations, 11 new trucks, full-size fire trucks, and a bunch of other assorted equipment. So the bulk of the benefit of the Henderson money all went to capital, and we didn't spend it on operational stuff. That's gone away.
I have a question. So, Idaho Springs has already committed, or, because I can't see that they would be like, okay, Georgetown's getting approved, so we want to bump it up to 9 mil so they can have a crew up in Georgetown.
no, they've committed to the 9 mils. They understand that with the 9 mils, yeah, you guys get a crew. They also get a crew. In reality, both municipal partners get a crew is the end goal. And then if you look at the study on the last, I want to say the last page, it shows we did a response test in 2021 of staffing either station and see what it does. And it's kind of weird because what we thought it would do, it didn't do. It actually reduced response times across the board. And if you would have theoretically put that out there, it shouldn't have, but it did. We had to go through the data about 3 different times and go, wow, that actually worked. Now the percentages are greater depending on where you staff each area that it does. So they'll get a full-time crew. Basically, we're not going to staff out of Dumont, volunteer. We'll also offer a volunteer shift out of that station. But the goal is to put the staffing where the need is. And really the need is within the municipal boundaries or as close as we can. In this, the Silver Plume Empire of Georgetown, if you box that in, and then the Idaho Springs east part of the county. And that's the goal from a staffing perspective, to be the most effective we can with crew placement, is to do that.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate you bringing this to us. I have to admit that I had sticker shock at the very first glance, but I'm working it out, and I think we would like to work towards this, so.
I think sticker shock is what I think we had to do. I think it's sticker shock without the explanation or without the questions being answered is completely what I would expect. That's what I would have done in your seat. Sticker shock without having the answer. So thank you for the time tonight. If you have further questions, please reach out. Whatever it is, we want to improve the knowledge versus limited, so I think we're trying to continue to get better.
Thank you for putting the data together.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Feel free to stay though.
Or not.
I think that would increase the.
Or for a nickel, I'll give you my chair for the rest of the night here.
Ironically, I sit in the equivalent chair that in the county on Monday night, so I completely understand. Upstairs, for anybody that would like to have those, and I sent them electronically in your email.
Okay. I will take a
You
look.
gonna help us with Christmas trees again this year?
Oh, yeah, sorry, real quick, Christmas trees, yes.
Well,
Because it's part of fire
Well,
mitigation.
actually, no, I'm gonna help with Christmas trees, but she has an amazing update on that, and I'll let her tell it, because
Okay, well,
there's other really cool stuff
Okay.
that's coming up with Christmas trees.
I don't wanna blow her surprise.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
we spend an hour today
Sorry.
planting Christmas trees, and it's
Okay.
really cool, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna let her do that in her update, because it's pretty awesome.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Very good. Thanks very much.
Have a great night.
See ya.
Okay, moving on, we have resolution number 10, series 2023. A resolution of the Board of Selectmen for the town of Georgetown, Colorado, approving a correction of the plan committee plat number 1, Bighorn Crossing minor subdivision, a re-subdivision of lot 4, block 2, first amended Bighorn Crossing subdivision.
Okay, on the staff report coming back up by, Mr. Davenport, who's on the screen, the town's, planners. This was noticed as a public hearing, so I appreciate you just opening. the
I
public hearing.
certainly will. And that it's at 7:13 PM, so.
Public hearing on agenda number
Okay.
3. Good. There's obviously a long history on Bighorn Crossing project, but this is a really small kind of correction piece of that. And Mike has done a really good job in his staff report that's in the packet. Those of you who were around for, I think it was 2017, when that plaque got, the original plaque got approved, will recall that a portion of this Bighorn Crossing project where the hotel is located is in the gateway mixed use zone district. And in that zone district, the uses are encouraged to be commercial. And there's a limitation on the amount of multifamily residential on any given site. So that it remains kind of commercial and it's not all used for residential. In order to be able to have a hotel in terms of the size of the hotel at that time and its footprint, in order to meet that 50% commercial requirement, the plat required 2 specific plat notes to burden some of the parcels there to make them available as rental units, basically as rooms in the hotel, and those separately constructed as basically the duplexes that are there. So that it would increase the effective percentage and it will allow that whole project to qualify and to be consistent with the gateway mixed use zone district. So the plat notes that were created at that time are virtually the ones that you see here, and I'll address the correction in a minute. But they were designed to ensure that those units remained always available to the hotel. Some of them have to be rented through the hotel, and then there are others that are available to the hotel. But when you put all that together, you end up with the required percentage. And so we wrote the plat notes actually downstairs in what used to be Rick's office down there that night, and brought them back up here, if you might recall, Mary probably recall, a very late night. But the plat notes were really important so that those units couldn't just be sold to second homeowners and then become multifamily residential and violate that code provision. And among other things, to violate the intent of the zone district, which was to keep it more commercial. A number of those units have been built. There's the plans of the developer to complete work on lot 4, which is kind of the remainder of that parcel. Those micro hotel units that are in through process, so it's not our purpose here tonight. But as built and as now located and intended to be located vis-a-vis the remainder of the undeveloped parcel, they're not all in the right place. And so the changes to these two plat notes identifies the right lots of blocks upon which some of the units are now and where they will be. The intent of plat notes and their purpose and their restrictions remain the same, but we're adjusting the location of these two sets of kind of restricted units to match up with where they are and will be on the plat, so that they're not in the wrong place. And Mike has done a shorter way of saying that by saying originally the units were be located on the east side of Rose Street, the new location's on the west side. So maybe I should have just said that. But the plat notes do, the change that you see, do that. I do want to say that there's another plat note, and I see Kurt Supup's on the line. If I get anything wrong, Kurt, you'll help me out, won't you?
Oh, certainly.
Yes, great. There's another note not being changed here that says, look, none of these units in this whole development can be part of the short-term rental program. And that was something that was important to the board at that time. And so that's, you don't see it here because it's not being changed. And that's kind of an overall restriction, but I wanted to remind you of that. Other than that, from a process standpoint, while we are putting together an ordinance to allow for plat corrections, every single city in the state, well, most of them that have a zoning code and subdivision regulations have a section on plat correction, so you can do stuff like this, right? The present zoning code doesn't have per se a plat correction process. It does have a process to say for the board to determine after public hearing, which is happening right here, that a request is not a subdivision. And we're not dividing any land here. You know, we're slightly amending two plat notes. And in a jurisdiction that had a plat correction process, we use that process, but instead we have to use the somewhat more awkward process. I will tell you that Mike and I have developed Mike's firm and I have developed an ordinance that you'll see shortly that adds a plat correction process and growing up plat correction process to our code book. So we use that if you don't have to do a workaround like this. So that's my report. What did I miss, Kurt or Mike?
I think that you and Rick have done a phenomenal job in trying to process this. We were trying to get this operational and developing earlier in the spring when we got our DRC approval. Clearly we came into some roadblocks, which you guys had to navigate, and clearly prevented us from doing something that all you selectmen had requested in moving that berm. And we just thought that 3 months ago or 4 months ago, when we got the DRC approval, we'd get a civil permit, and then we would proceed and get that done when we had the actual crews there. We will be working on that this fall. I'm working on that now to get that done, and we'll accept the city's dirt to build a canal or whatever's necessary and spread that out. But you know, just for the record, this is city dirt. We've accepted all the dredgings, which were 70,000 cubic yards to put it through our development. It cost us well over $750,000 to do this, which certainly saved the city a significant amount of money, not having to transport this dirt to some other location. The bottom line is what Jerry has expressed. Yes, we're going to be eliminating a significant amount of short-term rentals. These will be just 50 units that will be built on lot 5 and 6, 5 buildings instead of 15 buildings. And again, the berm, we will be working immediately to get this moved and spread out on our property.
I want to emphasize, and I appreciate Kurt's giving you the sort of larger context and background, which is his job to do, and I appreciate him doing that. My job is to remind us all, here's what's in front of us tonight, which is correcting the legal descriptions in 2 plat notes. Now, I get it, that affects the rest of his development, and because of where he sits, he sees this as a unified whole, which he should. But, what's not in front of you is, did the berm get moved or not, or should it be or not? I get it, in Kurt's world, he needs this too, to be able to move forward with the project that he wants to build. But we are correcting some legal descriptions, and we're retaining the deal the town made with Bighorn at the time, that there would be a certain number of units that would be, that would not be long-term multifamily residential.
So there's 11 townhomes that are built on the property right now. And there's no street sign over there. So I don't know if it's Rose Street or not. Are those Rose Street addresses?
If I could speak, this is Mike Davenport. That section of Rose Street as part of the subdivision is going to be renamed Bighorn Trail. But it's basically where Rose Street right away would be. That is going to be built as Bighorn Trail, The townhomes that you mentioned are on the east side of the street. The apartments that were just described, the 50 units that would include the restricted hospitality units, they would be across the street. That would put them on the same side of the street as the hotel.
So the existing townhomes right now have addresses that are on Rose Street as it exists right now. Is that correct? That's not Rose Street.
I think it's platted as Bighorn Crossing. I think that's platted already as Bighorn
So
Crossing.
those 11 townhomes that I've been under the impression have been these hospitality suites are no longer going to be hospitality suites.
I think some are, correct, Kurt?
Well, not if we're moving the east side to the west side, because they all look kind of in a line to me.
How the hospitality units were designated, 7 could be in that first 11, and the remaining were distributed in lot 5. So the original plat had 7 in lot 4 and the remaining in the other lots.
So 7 of the existing 11 townhomes are
deeded. They are deeded
are
as hospitality units.
Are going to remain as hospitality suites
Right,
of the existing townhomes.
right.
And right now, those are operated as hospitality suites.
Correct.
And I see Brittany's here, and that's.
I want confirmation from her. I would like Ms. Patel to speak up, please, because I know this has been a bone of contention, and I'd like to understand it better.
I just want to clarify, you said the 50 apartments, they're not going to be townhomes anymore? When he spoke, he said apartments.
That's what he's saying.
How is this still the same lot? How is it still saying that they're not townhomes? Am I now required to rent 4 of those as hospitality units, apartments, rather than 2 and 3 bedroom townhomes?
No, there'll be discrete units that will be available for rent, and I'll have Kurt address that in a minute. Another part of sort of the universe around here, and Brittany and I know this very, very well, because we've been on any number of calls, is just sort of the logistics and mechanics and the administrative difficulty that is inherent in a hotel needing to be renting those units. And we struggle with that and keep struggling with it. There are various solutions we've thought about, and we'll probably have to keep struggling with it. I don't mean to say that that's not important, because it is, and it is. I know it's important for me. It's not triggered by this, by adjusting the legal descriptions of plat notes to match up with where the hospitality units are and will be, which is this purpose here. I get it that there's a lot of other threads that, that can be pulled on the Bighorn Crossing project. I'm not unaware of that.
Well, and I think I share Mary's concerns that, we don't wanna treat this as the last piece that needs straightening out. We as a board have been feeling for quite some time that there were other things that needed to be corrected with the changes that Kurt is proposing for this development, and just making sure that we all understand that this is one piece of those corrections that need to take place, not this corrects everything. Is that,
No,
okay,
hardly.
okay. I just wanted to
Yeah.
be very clear on that.
Do we have a map available that shows which lots and blocks this is?
I don't.
If I could share my screen, I can show that to you.
Great,
That'd be great.
might help.
Thanks.
visuals are good.
You're gonna have to move the cursor around and point us to where, because it's pretty small in the room here, Mike.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is the hotel up here this is the north end. This is south going towards downtown. This is the hotel. And the original location, as noted on the approved plat, was to have the units here on the east side of what was the Rose Street right-of-way. The approval of the plat changed the name of this right-of-way and the street to Bighorn Trail. So what this is doing, it would be moving those hospitality units across the street to these parcels here that's south of the hotel. So it brings them a little closer to the hotel.
And those are townhomes or apartments? There's one clarification.
Yeah,
These are two-story.
Fair question. And Brittany's asking Kurt if the units then to the west of the road, whatever it's gonna be called, are apartments or condominiums
Townhomes.
or townhomes.
These are all apartments these are all apartments. There's 50 units.
How are those gonna be sold to an individual?
So the question becomes, how can they be sold to an individual and then rented through the hotel is the question.
So we've eliminated 5 units in the whole project to satisfy any of the requirements for the hospitality units. And so also these 50 units satisfy the 50% or less in land usage in these 5 buildings in its lot by itself.
Okay, I think we're still not hearing, Kurt, where the hospitality units that are rentable by the hotel are required to be available to be rented by the hotel will be located, because if they're apartments.
And in the process, we eliminated.
Kurt, you gotta let me finish the question, Kurt. You just got to. I promise I'll shut up in a second. The concern that we're hearing in the room is that apartments couldn't be capable of being rented as hospitality units. Deed restricted, plat restricted hospitality units. So if you could address that.
We eliminated 5 units in the total count that we're allowed to build. Those 5 units are the hospitality units. We have the land space to accommodate the 50 units in lot 5 and 6.
But those 50 units are planned to be rental apartments.
These
Now-
are long-term rentals, yes.
How does it satisfy the commercial?
I'm still unclear.
No, it does not impact the commercial at all.
but they're apartments. They're similar apartments or a similar rental policy, just as the other 3 apartment buildings.
How these are set up right now is these are long-term rentals. We have approval to have these as short-term rentals. There could be 30 units here that could be short-term rentals. We have agreed to just make these all long-term rentals.
So when you say long-term rental, you're talking a 1-year lease
Yes,
to Joe Blow, who needs an apartment. They're vacant apartments, they're unfurnished apartments, and Joe wants to come in and live in Georgetown and rent an apartment for a year,
yes,
similar to the 3 other apartment buildings that you built.
yes.
And so 4 of those units in those micro apartments are going to be identified as hospitality apartments that will be rented through Microtel.
We have eliminated 5 units that were hospitality units so that we could accommodate the commercial basis. We have a whole nother section, as you know, next to this, which is another 5 acres that also has components of, that could have hospitality units if needed be. But with the account that we've done, this accommodates all the commercial necessary that we needed.
So, Kurt, it sounds to me like we have unanswered questions and we're gonna need to work this out a little bit longer. And I think Jerry agrees, we're not ready to, I mean, as far as I can see, there's no emergency nature to this ordinance as it stands, but we've got some connected, questions that we'd like to have answered before we pass this. So is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I'm not comfortable moving on this
If I
tonight.
can make a suggestion, I think what would really help Kurt and Mike for the board 2 weeks from now, I think our next meeting is October the 10th. And I think what we need is a map that, you know, depicts what's on the screen now, indicates where the plat required hospitality units are or will be, and then has the calculation that you've mentioned, which I understand, which is you managed to satisfy the 50% commercial requirement by moving some things around, and that might change the number of needed hospitality units. But I think the board needs to see that so that they can see where they are and where they are in relation to the existing ones. And not least, the hotel operator, in the form of Brittany, who's here in the room tonight, needs to know that too, because she's the one on the front line of really helping you satisfy that requirement as a result of the plat notes that she's subject to, because one of the plat notes is on the hotel parcel. That's, I think, what we need, and I'm happy to work with both of you, Mike and Kurt, to make sure offline we'll set a Zoom call, that we have a map that is capable of answering, I think, what the legitimate questions are here tonight.
I like those 7 existing deed restricted townhomes to be clearly identified on that map too, please.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I also just wanted, as I'm hearing this, and since Brenda's in the room and she was clarifying it too, about the 31 promised or was that included in the agreement that they were supposed to be 31?
That was something we came back and requested, knowing how successful the hospitality units would be. We went back and requested an additional 21 units. And those were to be scattered and maybe first come, first serve, but they weren't part of the 11 deed restricted.
Right. Okay.
So that was an additional.
But that was part of the development.
And those
Not on the platform, part of the agreement.
yeah. And there's a plan for that. So I agree, both categories need to be nailed down. The board just needs to see where they are.
I think that we sort of lost, Brittany's the one that came in and said she did not want to provide any more services. In the plat notes, she has the right to have these as rentals or not. It is purely Brittany's capability to say that she does not want to deal with this rental program. The plat notes state that it is the person in lot number 1 to agree to do the rental program. Brittany has come to Rick into the town and said that she does not want to further do any of the rental program, which would then comply with also the plat notes that she has now decided she did not want to do that. Is that correct, Brittany?
No, the comment I made was that once we could remove the third party that's in there now, managing them and renting them, the day that you finish building the 11 or the 30 some units is the day that I would take over. Because you hadn't fulfilled your side of building the 11 hospitality units. It was all part of the original agreement, went to the bank, went to everyone with that potential incoming. I'll take over as soon as they're built.
Okay, well, that I don't think Rick understood. Rick didn't understand that, nor did I. I only understood that you were not interested in being involved at all. And that's how I was informed, as well as you've informed me. So it's very simple. We can put 4 of building 1 units that will be short-term rentals for the apartment, for the hotel. There's your 11.
Well, Kurt, if we're, clearly, if we're gonna move pieces around on the table, we're not gonna do it in this room. We're not gonna do design by, committee of 10. And so we're not gonna be able to act tonight. My recommendation is the board simply move to continue the public hearing on resolution number 10 to October 10th and direct staff to work with the affected parties, which would be all the people in the room that have been talking here, to confirm what plat notes, if any, need to be changed and to bring forward the mapping that will support not only the plat note change, but to assure the board that the original arrangement, which really depended upon hospitality units to get to the 50%, can still be satisfied. We're told it can be satisfied now in a slightly different way. I'm with the board on this. They need to see it.
So moved. The first part, maybe not the second.
There's a motion and a second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
There's another part to this too, and I don't want to get into their business plan, but I was here when we agreed to the additional units throughout the townhome development. And if that's going to come into play, and we're talking about a higher density apartment situation as opposed to a townhouse, that's got to come up in these discussions.
We gave a full presentation a year ago that showed exactly the detail. We're going from we're bringing only 50 units into this project. We're only bringing in 5 buildings instead of 15 buildings.
Okay, we don't really have time to discuss that in full tonight, so let's work it out. It's continuing to the next meeting.
Did we vote on that motion?
Yes, we did.
Oh, we did.
Yes.
I went right past it.
Yep.
All
Done.
right.
Thank you very much. Next is the discussion on the transition to JeffCom 911 for dispatch services. In your packet, you've got materials that were provided to the county by Talon, isn't it Talon? Let me get to there.
Is it Brian Wickerson?
Yes, he's the consultant with town. So,
Town events.
yes. And it represents a reduction in, if Jeffcom were to do our dispatch services, some of our existing services would not be covered, and that's in these materials. But the 911 would be covered at a drastically lower charge than the county is able to provide the dispatch. The county has made the decision that for budgetary purposes and reasons, they would like to go to Jeffcom 911 for dispatch services. They would also like the municipalities in the county to be on board with that decision, because they're kind of, their movement in that direction sort of instigates our movement. They would also like to collaborate with us on the services that Jeffcom 911 will not cover. And we've got Marshall Williams here to help us with this. He's been involved in the discussions for many meetings here. So, do you wanna?
I think that kind of summed it up.
Okay.
If we remember, we approached this board in 2022 when Idaho Springs was considering moving to Jeffcom due to reinterpretation of the contract we had with Clear Creek County and our communications board as a whole, and found that the cost was going to be increased somewhat significantly. Idaho Springs couldn't absorb that cost. They chose to go to Jeffcom and entered their letter of intent in January of 2023. The board felt that they were very comfortable and liked the continuity of services, so we chose to stay with it. In the interim, the county as a whole, the commissioners tasked the county manager to explore the whole county changing their emergency service communications operation to Jeffcom, and pretty much this is the decision that they made. There's not a lot that Georgetown can do independently of being part of this change. So there is less of a charge eventually from Jeffcom, where the manner that we're being charged for services is different, but services are going to be impacted. The way it's best described is a change in culture in how we're using our emergency services. There's going to be a lot of services that are not going to be provided, that we're making adjustments to be able to accommodate. So I don't know, included the review from Talon, whatever they're called, from Brian Wilkerson. What is included and what's not included. If you have questions about that, I can probably answer them. There are definitely going to be some changes, and to use the term they're throwing out there, a change in culture in emergency services. We'll see if this was better or worse. Do you need this at all? No, I don't.
Can any of these services, these excluded services, be handled in-house with your non-sworn personnel?
That's the changes, especially if we're able to fill our fourth position either with a combination of a code enforcement officer / administrative person, and or if we were fortunate enough to find an officer that could work for Georgetown, we just have to spread out these tasks. There's some hoops to jump through to make it happen, but we would be able to work it out.
I mean, because obviously the county relies more on some of these jail-related services or a larger percentage than we do. So to me, that's not really, I mean, if it's an excluded service, it really doesn't make that much of a difference, or the impact is not as great on us as it would be on them. So
Right.
but so then we're still gonna end up paying the county for some of those excluded services if we go to JeffCom.
Not necessarily the excluded services, although that is a consideration of contracting with somebody who has those abilities that also works for the county, contracting with them to provide these services for Georgetown. Because of how the ORIs, which is how each individual agency is able to enter into CCIC, NCIC, CBI records, and everything else. To get a coordinator, a CCI coordinator, we'd have to contract with him separately from the county, which we discussed that happening.
But we're doing that a couple of hours a week in comparison to, I mean,
Yes.
our portion of Georgetown's.
Or per task kind of stuff.
Right.
So that's already one of the considerations. Everything is going to still be under the emergency services communications budget. So it's not going to affect that, but it's not going to be the entire savings that's outlined on this list, where it goes from $150,000 to, and that's
Right.
rounding up to $5,000.
So are we starting to talk about what those dollars are gonna be for Georgetown? I mean, once the JeffCom 911 or whatever is pulled out.
Long-term, and that depends on usage, is where that number, that $5,000 number comes from. Because of how they bill. Long-term usage, it's going to be a greatly reduced number. The cost of having to contract out for some extra services is not going to be a huge number. So there will be savings in the long run. The initial transfer to interface with JeffCom's systems and computer systems that we, and our own, that we pay a lot of money for. We're looking at transfer cost of probably upwards near $30,000 in total.
Right, the startup costs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Beyond that, absorbing a lot of the work and contracting out the little things that we're not able to do, we're not looking at a great number.
Has the county been told yet whether they've been approved yet, or is it pending
No,
on if we all come
That's
on
going to
board?
happen in a meeting, the third Thursday in October is when the board, the JeffCom board is going to decide that they're going to approve it. And then there will be contracts, hopefully by the beginning of November, but probably not until the beginning of December. And then it's 6 to 9 months for the transition period.
Do they go into a stronger standing if all of the municipalities are behind that and transferring over, or don't they care?
I think they,
Or does JeffCom maybe not care? I don't know.
I think they're doing it as a whole with all of Clear Creek County's users. However, because of the lower number that's anticipated across the board, some of the information in this handout that you all had, like Clear Creek having its own pod, is probably not likely to happen. We'll have to share a pod with some other agencies.
Like who?
They threw out Morrison and some other smaller agencies. I don't know what their usage is, but we would still have our own radio channels.
So Clear Creek County and Georgetown and Idaho Springs are still gonna be operating,
We would all operate just as we are,
but through JeffCom
dispatch. So all of that interfacing would make that happen. We lose, the familiarity with it. with the dispatchers knowing where they're at.
That's part of the learning curve too, though, for that. you
It's
know.
a change in culture.
They're gonna
too.
have dedicated dispatchers that typically work the county,
Uh,
you know, they'll be said, well, they have to cross-train, but you,
We're hoping that that was the initial promise, but with the change in not having a dedicated pod, that's gonna be a little impacted. It's gonna be an
oh, it's
adjustment.
gonna be a change, yeah,
It'll be an adjustment.
yeah.
But for the most part, there really is not a lot of alternatives.
Well, so,
We can put a lot of money in and get our own dispatch center and try and hire somebody to work it 24/7. We could do it as minimal as pass out cell phones to everybody, but
and JeffCom 911 has enhanced services that right now the county isn't able to provide to us, just from a simple cost basis. This is the way I understood it from the county presentation. Do you get that same sense? Maybe their technology is newer and
they
quicker,
have some
you
technology,
know?
but not in its entirety. There's a lot of things our dispatch center is able to do that's not gonna be included in this. Something as simple as the AVLs, which is locating where every officer is. We have that currently, having my thing hooked up to our system. That's not available through JeffCom. We could do it through the cameras, but that's not our first choice because it uses so much battery to do that. There's other manners to do it, and all of it has pluses and minuses. There's just an adjustment that needs to be made.
Any other questions for Marshall Williams?
So budgeting for this next year, how do we approach that? I guess is there,
We're gonna need to, it's a good question, Rich. We're gonna need to go with the assumption that we don't know whether we're gonna get approved, so we have to work on the numbers that show us staying with Clear Creek County Dispatch.
right,
And then
I mean,
realize the
numbers and
savings.
savings and stuff won't be realized that much in the first year anyways, because the startup.
There will be some, but not that great savings.
Not that dramatic.
That will give us some buffer to be able to do it, and especially if it takes us 6 months, 9 months, that first 6 or 9 months, we're still going to be paying into Clear Creek County. Our contract still is we're paying 100% of our share of using Clear Creek County dispatch. So that will make even less savings because half of the year or more, we're already paying what we have in.
Okay. So we would like to take a motion on this, to approve going with JeffCom services, JeffCom 11 services, to follow the county and the other municipalities.
So,
Second,
Okay, been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I could talk around, perfect.
is that included or excluded services? And how are you gonna charge us?
Okay. Next, we have, options for new special use in Gateway Commercial District.
You have a memo in the file, or hopefully in the packet.
Do you use mine?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. As the board, you've seen this now a number of times, and I've spent time with our planners as well to try to evaluate what particular special use category might be appropriate here. The direction you gave at your last meeting, while it was not sort of, wasn't unanimous, but as I think I articulated, there seemed to be at least some general support for it to look at. And so I said, in context of where we are now, a use category that would be pretty narrow. And so I spent time with the planners, and this is what we come up with. It's in bold italics toward the bottom. And it reflects as much as we can, kind of what we heard from the property owner in this particular case, Serenity for Life, and looked at their materials that they provided to us. And it largely tracks that. And there's a number 12, I think that's the number of rooms presently in that building. That number's a legislative decision for you, and it can be any number, but we picked that number because it doesn't match up with what's there now. The language about the medical treatment of persons addressing mental health and life challenges comes right from their materials. You'll notice that it says it's an inpatient facility incorporating medical treatment. That's those two components that we started with before, because they indicated that both of those elements are important here, but they're not presently allowed in that zone. District. And we said with treatment stay not to exceed 28 days, which is also in their materials, although I recognize that they, in fact, I think there was a discussion last time that maybe they would extend, or a particular patient would want to be extended. We thought for your purpose of discussion, we'd start here. So you've got something to start from and to give us direction on. We certainly bring back an ordinance. And the other thing I guess I mentioned would be the other protection, which you know is this is special use territory, and you're allowed, even if there's an application for exactly this, say no to any given special use application. You make a little record of why you're saying no, and that's really defensible. You know, in use by right territory, it's not defensible to say no. In special use territory, it is, and that's why it's a special use. That's my thumbnail sketch. Happy to get feedback if it gets to the point where you're comfortable with some language, you can inject it into an ordinance. It's a short ordinance to write, and we can easily do that.
So at what point do we get into the conditions if we agree to go forward with a special use?
They would have to make an application for a special use permit, which gets reviewed, if I'm not mistaken, by DRC first. I think it goes to them, planning commission. And just similar to the special use that the board approved for the millings, that's a decision by the planning commission, public hearing, with an available appeal to this board. So possibly it stops it, but that's how special use reviews are processed across the board.
So the conditions may rest with the planning commission unless the applicant brings it back as an appeal.
Yeah, and when you think about it, that's what actually happened on the millings. It was appealed not by the applicant, the town, but by adjacent property owner, and the board, when it acted, adjusted, you might recall, one of the conditions that the planning commission imposed, and so you have that authority that came to you. If it's not appealed, then it's whatever the planning commission decided is the end of the special use review. And that special use review process is uniform, you know, throughout the code. I wouldn't propose changing it for this particular thing.
No, I just wanted to make sure that I was clear on
That's how it works.
at what those could come up. And obviously there's a public hearing for special use if that were to come up through the other commissions.
Yeah, it would come from planning commission. Special uses here are reviewed by code, first by DRC with the recommendation of planning commission, I think, at a regular meeting, no hearing. Planning commission, public hearing. And they make final decision unless the applicant or opponent would appeal to the board.
Thank you.
Any other questions? What's our direction to staff? What would you like to see? Start with you, Rich.
Well, it seems the process starts with the DRC and the planning commission. And so I suggest that that's where it starts, and then if there's a problem, then they can appeal. Serenity can appeal to the board.
Well, I think what we need to know though is, right now, this isn't in our code. Well, so really the question in front of the board is, because this particular animal as a special use is not on the list in this zone district. And they can't apply for it because it doesn't exist yet.
So we need to, sorry, so we need to make a record, or, we need to make a motion so that it would go to planning commission so that they can make a decision.
Well, what you need to do is direct Rick and I to write an ordinance to amend the book, and to plug this in there, or then it's in there and it's available to anyone to apply for, but pretty narrow category of people who want to apply. So do you want to change the code really to allow this?
Yeah,
in
which
that
I-
zone district?
Yeah, I thought we kind of talked about that before. I think we had our reasons for sticking with the code as it was, correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, we were hung up on the commercial aspect of it and the
Yes.
fact that we are losing, and as it exists now, as the Chateau Chamonix, we would be losing lodging tax, which, you know, we feel is important to this community and what it can bring. And we're losing 12 hotel rooms for tourism. However, with this special use for this special facility, the information that I'm aware of from conversations that we've had is that the people who would be staying there would still be making a contribution in some economic way to the community. So it kind of maybe sort of falls into a gray area of commercial. But then we just talked about how we were looking at the plat change with the, you know, the residential component and the commercial component down at Bighorn. So, you know, we do changes sometimes. I don't see a special use procedure. I don't know, I should reword that. I think there's a benefit to proceeding with a special use procedure and see if it flies.
It's better than spot zoning. Isn't that what?
Right, rather than
Yeah,
change,
it's not-
rather than change the zoning,
You're right.
but knowing the impact that it has. But again, we talked about, well, let's see if we can't word this such so that the 12 rooms are being charged a lodging, you know, because they are paying for lodging as part of their stay.
28-day guess.
Yeah, well, that was my biggest concern, was just the commercial aspect of it. Past that, I think whoever stays there is gonna, anybody's gonna benefit the town. But would it offset enough?
I think it's characterized, I think we could get there, because it's an inpatient facility with medical treatment. And I think we can be able to characterize at least a component of what they pay. A number $10. If 5 of that is for the accommodations and 5 is for the medical treatment, the 5, I think we can make subject to accommodations tax.
And that's what I was gonna say, could we, in a condition, add that, or amend the lodging tax ordinance to include that use so that it was part of it, under that specialized
Yeah,
term,
define accommodations to include
whatever that
inpatient
says.
facility accommodating, you know.
Yeah.
Yes, I think we actually could get there, and I don't think, from what I've heard from the particular property owner, and they're not the ones necessarily driving the bus for an overall code change, but what I've heard is that there's not an objection from them to that. I think they recognize that they're providing some accommodations, and they're also providing medical treatment. So I think we can figure out how to divide that.
And then that would meet the commercial requirement of the code as it is.
Well,
Special use.
Yes, if you amend the code.
Yes.
You know, amending the code puts this into the code and says this is a use that's allowed by special review in that zone district. But you have to amend the code first, which is really the question from the board, and we can bring forward a first reading ordinance. So it might be that easy.
Go ahead.
Is there any long-term consequences of other places wanting to do the same? Was that gonna be an
And
issue?
that, well, that I think was what Jerry was alluding to, in the sense that he's made a very narrow niche that this will address.
Yeah, it's narrowly defined, number one, and number two, it's a special use. So, you know, you can,
There's that.
the first one could be approved at 12 patients, et cetera, and the second one, no, because it's in this other location and you're concerned about the neighbors, or you're concerned that it's not a good use of that land. So you'd be able to say no in that.
I just think in the back of our mind, and I'm for looking at a special use on this, but we're gonna be talking about a hotel ordinance in our work study here, and we're making oranges out of bananas and oranges. I couldn't say apples and oranges, so you have to bear with me. So, I mean, I just, you know, but I think we should give it a chance to go through the process.
Oh, okay, I thought you were gonna say table
No, I tabled the last one, or I wanted to table
it. Okay, no, that's fine, I mean, well, do you wanna make a motion to direct us at ordinance, and so moved?
it. Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
The motion was to draft an ordinance.
To draft an ordinance.
Yeah.
To allow.
Okay. Any opposed? I didn't hear it. Okay. Awesome. Okay, we are finally at our work session. Wahoo.
The hour we've all been waiting for.
Thank you so much for your patience, everybody.
This one, I really would have. Sorry.
So.
Okay. I might step out because you guys don't need minutes for the work session part. Is that true? Or do
No,
you
it's
need?
not required, did
I
you?
mean, you wanna.
Going into long-term hotel stays.
I don't want to stay up till midnight. I can't just.
Now we don't have to come back on Zoom.
That's true.
Yeah.
So.
Or would you rather have to stay?
Well.
We don't have to come back for.
I can just send it up until the sixth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, staff
We got
report.
staff report
Oh, yeah.
coming after.
We can still record it, though.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
We'll still stay on, it's still being recorded, so.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay,
Actually, the public meeting remains open. because
Trying to correct it.
You've got to do executive.
yes. Yeah, we have it.
Okay, you can stay, but you don't need to.
Do you guys care if we get closed session?
No, please, come and cozy up. Boy, good timing that you were here.
Yeah, that's sort of snuck in there. Thanks, Tom. My concern is that from 10, I'm gonna be in flight. Land at like 7.
Then some are fun.
Well, I'll just,
So, we've got some people joining us tonight from the hotel industry.
You can move all the way up.
Yeah. Come on up then. Yeah, please do. And tell us who you are.
Kelsey Weber, I'm one of the owners of the Georgetown Lodge, we purchased it earlier.
Okay,
What's your first name? I'm sorry.
Kelsey.
Kelsey, okay.
that's easy for me.
and I'm Brittany Patel, and I'm here earlier, but I'm one of the owners of the Microsoft, I can't, the light. The one that was in discussion earlier.
And my name is Han Nguyen. I am the owner of the Hotel Chamonix. I'm here to support these two. That's it.
Thank you. Okay, thank you so much.
And this,
She's
Still on?
gonna be on Zoom.
Yeah, I just promoted her and
Okay.
so she, I don't know where she is. Are you there, Amber?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we just can't see you.
Oh, I don't have the video on.
Okay. Okay, so as you're all aware, we did pass an ordinance last year that was ordinance number 8, series 2022. that put this, hotel licensing program in place. And then we, at your request, passed another ordinance number 6, series 2023, that was passed in June of this year to amend it so that the hotel licensing program didn't take effect until, I believe, December of this year. So, but we needed to come back together and figure out how this licensing program ought to be run. So that's where we are. And we've got an email from you, thank you, Brittany. Did we get anything from?
No, I was of understanding that Rick, so we didn't have to, prior to.
Well, it would have been helpful, it gives us time to absorb where you're coming from, because I don't think we've actually heard from you yet. So.
We appreciate you being here though,
Yeah,
rather
we
than having this all come in bits and pieces. So
Yeah.
thanks for coming tonight.
And do you happen to have the previous emails back and forth with Amber as part of the discussion? And she had some.
What I'm hoping is she encapsulates, I mean, there were a lot of them.
Okay.
And what I'm hoping is that she's prepared to encapsulate her concerns, in a tidy bundle tonight.
Okay.
So.
Is it Amber online?
Yeah,
Okay, good.
she got promoted, we just can't see her. So, maybe when you're ready to, I will just call on you after Kelsey. How's that sound? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I've never been to one of these before, so I apologize if I approach this incorrectly. When I read through ordinance 8, there are some things that feel like they are attacking us. Now, I first want to say, I think I understand the purpose of this ordinance. You can go through parts of Idaho Springs, you can go through parts of Colorado Springs, you can go through Denver, there's some gross hotels, right? And I think the understanding is that we don't want that to come to Georgetown. And I completely am behind that concept. By no means do we intend to slim out the Georgetown Lodge. That's not why we bought the place. And that's not why we're paying money into doing it. So I just want to say that I think I am behind the spirit of this ordinance. There are lots of aspects in it that concern me and my rights as a business owner. So do I just go into it?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
First off, just for our benefit, how long have you owned the Georgetown Lodge?
We bought it in June.
Okay,
Yes.
okay,
So it's not very long.
that helps.
Yes, okay, so first thing I see, and I know Brittany will clearly touch on this, is the recording of all this information from guests. This is often information that we record, but our PMS system doesn't have any tidy way to put that all in a nice spreadsheet without taking significant amount of time. So like if someone were to come in and say, hey, if there's a missing person, can you look up a John Doe signed in here? We can look up John Doe and give you that information. But if you ask us, hey, in July, you had 1,000 guests come through your hotel, can you provide us all this information? We've got to have someone who like sits at their computer and types it all into an Excel spreadsheet, which is just labor hours that I don't understand the point of or the purpose. So that is concern number one, is just the labor for that extra reporting. And also a question that I don't know the answer to is like, is that all legal for us to give away, or is that confidential information? And I don't know the answer to that. The second thing we have in here is for employee housing, you guys are asking that you provide cleaners, cooking, and laundry facilities, or the facilities must be within 40 feet of room. I do think that, if people are gonna live there, you should provide basic services of a place to cook meals and laundry. We're here at Lodge, and our lodging is in one building, and all those other facilities are in another building. And so to accommodate that for a couple of employees that do live on site, we would either have to move their employee housing into the lodge and remove the possibility of renting out that upstairs space to a tenant, which we would like to be able to do to bring in extra revenue for both us and the town and provide extra space for commercial use in town. So it would prevent that possibility. Or we would have to put kitchens into the lodging buildings, which seems like a major safety thing, to throw a kitchen into a building just hotel rooms. So I would propose that if this ordinance continues, that just gets changed to on-site and not within 40 feet. There's just no way that we can safely do that, I don't think. Another question I have is, why is there a difference between construction workers and seasonal workers? My background outside of owning this hotel and one in Colorado Springs is property management. And it just starts to feel like we're getting into like a lot of the fair housing type of stuff, and we start to ask us to stereotype between what kind of worker, what kind of guest, what kind of worker is. It seems like you're asking us to stereotype and then give them different treatments, which seems like it's opening up us as a business to just a lot of liability. So that's another concern. Another concern is you guys have maximum overall capacity for transient family stays, seasonal workers, and occupational construction extended stays in total cannot exceed 20% of available rented room on licensed premises. First off, I want to say that in no way interferes with our current business plan. But we also learned one of the things during COVID that sometimes a business has to get flexible to survive and to be able to keep all of its people employed. And I feel like that really limits it. Like, what if tourism stops, but somehow we can get some J1 workers from London to stay in our lodge, and then we can keep people employed. And so I just feel like that encroaches on the need to get creative, if the creativity need ever comes about. Another thing, approval or denial of applications. You guys have that if it gets denied, that it can come to a administrative decision of the town, but it doesn't specify if there's any right to cure after it's been denied. So if you shut us down for whatever reason, here's nothing here that says if you fix that reason, you can have your license back until like 12 months later, which again prohibits me from staying in business and continuing to keep our people employed. And then I'm getting close to the end. And then additionally, under suspension or revocation of license grounds, you guys have in there, it's not required that any criminal conviction be obtained to support the administrative action, and then it has things down below it. So the licensee of any employee that are illegally offered for sale or illegally allowed to be consumed or possessed upon the licensed premises or upon any parking areas, sidewalks, walkways, access ways or grounds immediately adjacent to licensed premises, narcotics or drugs or dangerous drugs. Obviously, I don't want drugs around on my property. I have no intention of trying drugs on my property, and if I find out an employee is doing that, I'm gonna fire them. But then, why can someone make it what seems like just an accusation that my employee has done that, and then as a result, get my license taken away, and have to lay off again everybody and shut down the establishment? That seems a little unjust. And then the same thing to look for prostitution. Again, we are not ever going to try to run any sort of form of brothel on our establishment. And if an employee gets caught knowingly doing that, they will be terminated. But then again, why is the whole establishment being shut down for that? Like, I get that if it's a brothel, we should shut down the brothel. I'm on board with that, but that's not, like, if an employee missteps, I feel like it should be like, they are terminated, not your whole business gets taken away from you. That's just, so that is, in summary, most of my objections with this ordinance.
Would you be able to put those all in writing
Yes,
for us? That would be wonderful.
I will send that to you in an email
yeah.
tomorrow.
That'd be great, yeah, those two. So, Amber, are you ready to speak?
Yes.
Okay.
I really do think Kelsey really summarized really well what we talked about in the last meeting between the three of us and Rick. There's a couple of nuances like how many feet away certain things have to be, like the laundry and stuff like that. But if you guys do end up regulating, we can go into detail about that kind of stuff. But in general, we're kind of wondering why the town feels we need to be regulated in the first place. Essentially, like I think the initial intent of this ordinance was to regulate long-term stays, but what it ends up doing is just regulating our industry in general. Like we have to get a whole license. We already have a business license, but we have to now get another license just to operate something that we already do. So we're just kind of wondering if you guys can maybe throw some light into why this became a thing and why you guys think we need to be regulated?
Sure. You know, I'll try and tackle it and people can fill in if I've forgotten something, but we were asked by our police department to address a problem. And back in 2016, I believe it was, we started drafting this, this regulation. And let's point out that if you're doing a short-term rental, you not only have to have your short-term rental license, but you have to have a business license as well. So they're, you know, lodging quite often will have multiple, it just depends on the type. But what the police department was experiencing was numerous calls, and they were all connected to, there were incidents that were happening, and they were all connected to rooms that had long-term stay residents in them. And there had been alterations done to the rooms that were not authorized, and it created safety hazards. There was cooking in the rooms, and there was really no supervision happening. And we tried to work with the hotel motel owners at the time, and what we had hoped would happen would be that the owners would self-regulate and they would turn this around and reduce the number of calls that occurred because of long-term stay occupants of hotel rooms. And when that didn't occur, the police department came back to us and said, things have not changed. If anything, they're getting worse. So we need to make a change. We need more regulation so that everybody understands the rules involved and how can we make this safer. And we ended up coming up with the ordinance last year. We were trying to define the various types of long-term stay people. So we thought, okay, highway construction workers. CDOT quite often brings in crews for highway projects that they end up staying a long time, particularly when you've got large projects here in the county that are multi-year. They'll switch them out every 6 months or so maybe, but they're long-term. And we've got seasonal workers that need places to stay. We've got winter seasonal, we've got summer seasonal. So We were trying to envision that. We've also got the people who are in transition. They landed here in Georgetown, they've got family, they need a place to stay that's longer than a week or two. And so, that's where we started coming up with all of the categories that we did. And then trying to figure out what kind of needs that those types of residents would need. Because a hotel room doesn't satisfy all of those on a general basis, most don't. So do you need laundry facilities either in or on site, as you said, close by? You need kitchen of some kinds. They can't eat out all the time, and they can't do makeshift kitchens, you know, on the bathroom counter. They were putting in actual cooking facilities into rooms. So we were trying to envision things that would cover all of the safety issues that had been brought to our attention. That's how things got into this. And we might have gone overboard on trying to address every possible contingency and, you know, who would be in the room, what would their needs be, but that's where we came up with all of those. And it obviously predates your ownership, and it predates, yes, back in 16, it was brought to us, so. That's how it occurred. Does that answer your question, Amber?
Yeah, it does. And just adding on to that, I think if we're trying to, like, if the main reason is trying to address a criminal element where, you know, someone's breaking the law, I don't know if we, like, for example, some of the things like, you know, that you can't have more than 2 pets, or how many days they can stay. Would that have a direct impact on reducing, like, getting calls? Not necessarily, right? Because, like, in my experience, like, I don't know how it's for other properties, but regardless of whether they are here for construction or for seasonal jobs or just passing through, like, it really just depends on those people. Like, some of them will smoke marijuana on the property. We tell them not to. We have to kick them out. It doesn't matter what job they're doing it for. Like, I don't know if, like, having a laundry on site 15 feet away from their room discourages them from being involved in breaking rules. Like, from our perspective, anything that they do that's illegal or unhealthy or unsanitary is bad for our business. There's no reason for us to get business from those people, because it's bad for business. So I'm hoping we can go back to self-regulating for various reasons. Maybe the police can, if there's been less calls since Kelsey has taken over. But if we do have to regulate, I mean, like, whatever everyone says, I support. But the one thing that is mainly I'm opposed against is the reporting requirements. I don't see how that's reasonable or legal, because I did find multiple, at least one Supreme Court case that's relevant to the case. And then there's a new privacy law for state of Colorado that would be affecting this, because we have to let the guests know how we're using the information. And once it goes from us to the town or the police, like, we have absolutely no control over how it's used. Like, can you guarantee that it will be used legally, or that it would remain private? Like, what if there's a hacking incident, or is used not in the manner it should have been? Like, I just don't see how the reporting requirement would be smart thing to do. Especially Brittany also brought out the fact that the reporting will be done after the fact. So they could have already been gone long out of their stay. So I don't know how it would help, except to kind of just, I guess, to police the property. Like, hey, you guys are actually not doing a good job with the long-term stay. So it just seems like the ordinance creates so much distrust between us, the people who operate the industry and the town. And I just hope there's another way to have better trust between the two parties.
Okay, thank you. Brittany?
I tried to put as much as I could into the email, of course, it was quickly written. Kind of mirror Kelsey, like I see that there's a good intent with this, but certainly the need to tighten up the wording and maybe not be so harsh, but the big things were the privacy of the customer's information and what are you gonna do with it? Where are you gonna store it? What good does it do you, or are you paying the lodging tax on it? And if I'm not reporting it till after they've checked out, what good did that do? And I can check a guest in, he can cause the same domestic disturbance or drugs or prostitution in a day as I can in 28 days. So I don't know that this doesn't even help that either. So again, like this came about before we existed. But the way we operate ours is we are physically in the rooms every 1 to maximum 3 days. We have our eyes on the room. If something is going wrong in there, we're not gonna allow it. We're gonna kick them out. So I really just am trying to grasp how this is going to help us. I just see it taking more time for us. Again, just tightening up the wording. We talk about reporting, but it doesn't say only for long-term stays in that specific paragraph. Am I giving you every guest that comes through my door? Like, where are you gonna put all of this information? If it's even legal to collect it. To Amber's point, how is this secure? I think that if we're going to move forward with this, it also should not just be limited to hotels. Obviously Airbnbs, VRBOs, bed and breakfast, there are short-term rentals as well, right?
Yeah, but they're short-term. There's the license already.
What if someone does the same thing?
Well, the license can be revoked if they don't adhere to the terms of the license, and the license already states a limited stay. Correct? Yeah. Short term is right in the title.
So if I am a hotel and I don't want long-term stays, do I still have to get this license and still report all of this? Like I am a short-term rental in a hotel.
I totally agree with that because the people who operate the Airbnbs, they're a residential property. They're getting a license to operate in likeness to us. So they can lose their license because they're a residential property operating as a commercial property in the short term. We are already a commercial property. So why are they not regulated the same way? If anything, they get more leeway, even though they're a residential property.
I guess I don't know about anybody else, but a short-term rental gets a license that is separate from their business license. And that short-term rental license has terms, limitations that already, they prohibit the long-term stay. And it was the long-term stay that hotels can provide, not all of them do, but could, that we were trying to solve a problem for.
Yeah.
So.
Correct, right now, you technically let people stay longer, correct? As it is, they could in the hotel.
In a hotel,
Yeah, like, so
yes.
right, that's what we're trying to sell, like, right now, you can let somebody stay for 30+ days. Correct? Yeah.
Yes.
So we're just trying to put it in place so that you can't, because you are short-term, so you should have to get a short-term license, like, actually, it's almost unfair to the VRBO because they can't, but you guys can't. I mean, do you understand that? I see where you're going with like.
I do.
and stuff. So if I come in, I want to stay there. If I pay every day, when are you gonna tell me to leave? And I get some of the other stuff for sure, because you guys are checking on the rooms. But I mean, you guys seem like great people and you want to run a business, but it's the people that was in your industry, maybe up till now, back in 2016 that wasn't. And so it's the consequence of those actions that we feel that we need to put in place so that people don't come and stay there. I mean, I'm sure you guys regulate it, but if I come there every day and I pay, are you gonna tell me that I can't keep coming? You want people to stay there?
Well, so that's another point though, it's like, if we're in their rooms all the time and they're doing what they should be doing and they're great guests, like, we have some down seasons here. We are down, right? July was awesome. Right now, not so awesome for occupancy. You're right, if a guest comes and they've been taking care of their room and it's clean and they offer to pay, we're gonna continue to take it. We're gonna continue to pay your tax because we don't have a month-to-month agreement with them.
But it is that separation of, it's, if I drive here in my car and I can park at the visitor center, what keeps me from just living out of my car? Just because, hey, it's cool here, I want a place to live. You have to look at that, is that best for a community? I mean, I get it's best for you because you want that income, you need that income. But then that's a separate issue. Then you should have to abide by the rules, and then it becomes long-term, which then people who need that long-term, my car couldn't be long-term. But I was, we've seen people in Colorado, they've made that long-term. It changes, I can't explain why, but it does.
We're talking about the safety though, and that's what
Yeah,
started this out, and I get it. There was a owner prior to you, Kelsey, and your establishment, and that's why, that's kind of, let's just, that's the elephant in the room, okay? And you're not that person right now. But there are, we are a tourist town, and we know we're promoting tourism, and that was one of the reasons why we implemented some of these, aspects of this ordinance. The 20% rule was one, because if I'm visiting another town, if you're visiting another town, do you want to feel like you're staying in a hotel where people are living there for months and months and months on end? You know how it just takes on an entirely different, you want that, you sound like you're not that owner. Brittany is not that owner. I get that, so how can we come to those compromises? I'm open for your suggestions. I can tell you the laundry and the kitchen facility, we want to be as respectful to those people who have found themselves out of the place for whatever reason and want to be able to cook something other than in the microwave. But then it becomes a building and a fire hazard if they're constructing walls and bringing in their little hot plate and stove and, adding on to that, exactly,
Propane.
and the,
The grill out.
Yeah,
Outside.
So, I hear the issue with the information that this ordinance is asking you to provide. And again, a compromise of that, I would be wondering who here in the town is going to be collecting that information on a regular basis. And where are we storing that? And what are we doing with that? And what is that labor intensity? It works on us too. It works on, Jen doesn't want to have more, on her plate. So, but could you, and you, I'm not going to hold you to this. Could you put your employee in a room that's within 40 feet of the laundry and the kitchen facilities that are provided, even though it's in a different building? I don't know, because I haven't been to your place. I live here, I haven't stayed in your place. So, but, or would 50 feet do it? Let's, so what is that, so that we're being respectful of the people who are living there for good reasons or maybe not so good reasons, but they're not upsetting the rest of the flow of your business. You don't want to be dragging, garbage bags full of dirty laundry because you and your, well, I'm going to give you 4 kids right now instead of, however many you have. So, it's just trying to be respectful to everybody. Should we have separate licenses? Should we have a regular, day-to-day kind of typical hotel? And I'm trying not to say short-term because that brings us into short-term rentals, which is a whole nother, species. and should you have the opportunity to apply for a long-term hotel license? I don't know, you tell, I'm thrilled you guys are here because we needed this when we were kicking through
I
this.
think the flip side of being respectful to these guests and those is to be respectful to a building that's been here since, I don't know, 50s, 60s, 70s, I don't know when the lot was built. But they just bought this place, so to ask them to like build a whole new section or add laundry facilities or kitchen facilities, I think a nice meet in the middle is, okay, for now, we have it on site. You know, like there's gotta be some, it's tightening up the wording.
I'm familiar with the
Yeah.
layout and on site, I think would satisfy, because I know the distance between your furthest room and the, you know,
Yeah.
the building that has the
I mean, there's three of us.
bar upstairs and, you
Well,
know.
there's some houses that you might walk 60 or 70 feet.
Yeah.
True,
So maybe not this time.
Or to the bathroom out back, you know? Yeah.
I guess our point, when we met back at the beginning of June, and maybe even prior to this, when we should have had these conversations, was just listen to our situation. There's three of us. Doesn't mean we shouldn't have a license, but there's certainly some things in here that just contradict each other. So there may be a huge capital investment that isn't necessary. So come visit us, come walk our properties. And maybe I'm the only one that's actually built to code where I could put a kitchen in, but I don't want to. So, and I have laundry on site. It's not 40 feet from every single room, but it's there.
Well, but
So
we were trying to also provide for the event that this owner doesn't want to offer that.
yeah,
But you can't like require one hotel. We couldn't figure out a way to make one hotel that was not policing their guests as carefully as they could have been, should have been. Have just that hotel owner get this license and try and make that the tool that we use to bring the behavior that we're desiring into line. Or, I mean, if you're gonna make one, then you need to make all of them, but you don't have to offer long-term stays.
but I have to get the license.
Well, we
Short-term
couldn't,
license.
And let's just throw out there, let's throw our calendar, we haven't had one long-term guest since we bought it, except for a couple of employees that live on site.
okay,
Like, that's not our business
that
model.
has not been the case. in
I
the past.
understand that hasn't been the case in the past,
Yeah.
but I'm just throwing it out there, like,
I just think you're really lucky to have the owners that you have right now. We're dedicated, we're there, we're running our businesses,
I agree.
we're running a good show. So to make some changes on us, to either loosen it up, not be so threatening, like we're gonna suspend you and then what? I can't pay my mortgage, it's gonna run itself into the ground and I'm gonna be forced to do long-term rentals that do all the stuff I'm not supposed to do. So it's just kind of like working with us on the wording and hearing our feedback and us understanding
Well,
why
I
we
mean,
did this.
the other extreme, you know, to go even further is, I mean, there's nothing that prevents us from, if everything is running smoothly and we don't have the problems that we needed to try and correct, the board could decide to rescind the whole thing. And you don't have to keep something that you don't need anymore. But that's up to the board. But thank you for all of your input. It really helps us, because when we were developing this, we weren't getting a lot of input.
Well, you gotta remember, it was just us.
Right.
And nobody here owns a hotel.
Right.
Nobody knows what it's like to run one of those things. So I mean, it was, you know, really important that you guys are here.
Well, I just think like the way you have it worded right now, and basically I wouldn't have to do anything. I wouldn't have to report anything, because if I'm checking them out every 7 days, they're never at 20 days. They're not rental. They're not technically, when do I decide I have to report that? Once they hit 20
Well,
days?
that's kind of playing, you know, sort of pseudo semantics games with wording. I mean, if you've got the same guest that stays 7 days, and then they stay 7 more, and they stay 7 more, and they stay 7 more, and then they stay the fifth week, you're into that long-term stay.
I think the hard part about it is it's like regulation. I think it's some of the parts and stuff where you can camp there for 3 days, you have to leave. It's not really policed, but it helps. I think it helps across the board so that people have an understanding of what you are. I mean, I get what you're saying. It's like, because you guys are short term. So I mean, you have to look on the other side. If I have a VRBO, you know, that I'm only allowed to do short term, but yet I have a full kitchen where people could live long term, and they can do that as they want. We want to keeping up with all the other hazards, and it's safety, you know, for you guys so that we know. I mean, I get what you're saying, like trying to track everything. I mean, if you guys want to do wrong, you could change the names and nobody would ever probably catch on. So then it's going to be based off of if there's been calls and stuff there. So I can see some of that stuff being changed, but I still think we need to have that short term because that's what you guys are.
And I'm making more work for myself by saying this, but short-term rentals are us. If they're there for 28 days and they leave and come back after being for a day.
But is there anything that says that they can't?
But that actually, you know, theoretically, that gets the owner into the room to
Yes.
see the
There's
conditions.
there's
which-
the eyes on the
Yeah,
room and
which
the.
We do
You
stay
said 1 to 2 days, you're already in the room.
and then, yeah.
Yeah.
So then.
Yes.
What is your ratio,
Those are what?
your ratio of getting in the room?
Oh, I think we clean every third day and my manager walks everything every week.
But I, you
That's
know,
more key stuff, you know?
I can see, Brittany, though, where you're going with the short-term rental properties and how this could apply to them, because we wouldn't want someone pulling up to a short-term rental, even if they're only staying there a week or two, and unpiling all of their furniture in the front yard and setting up space. Now granted, the homeowner hopefully would be taking exception to that, just as hopefully the business owner is taking exception to that. This should give you, if we do this correctly, should give you more weight, if you want, to, you know, hold people accountable. So maybe it's not always on you. It's almost like, you know, you always tell your kid, well, blame it on me, you know, kind of thing. And you can turn around and say, I'm sorry, the town doesn't allow you to do that. You cannot have your, you know, 36-inch gas range in my hotel room kind of thing. You know, so I mean, we should be helping you and pulling, you know, and self-regulate. So
I want this ordinance to actually help.
so.
Your number and your number and.
So, you know, and again, you know, I would have loved this dialogue back in January or whatever, when we started this, and, you know,
But would have saved a lot of man hours.
it would have on all of us, you know, I mean, because we like to beat that hill here.
It's true. So a lot of these, I think, issues may have disappeared with new ownership. One other little thing in here was having them move rooms, which we just sort of took on the 28th day. Well, now that's gonna cost me 1 or 2 hours of housekeeping, so $40-50. And then I have a gentleman that probably did stay about 28 days or even a month. Has a cane, has his computers, he's working on cabinetry. Am I gonna make him move rooms when I've been in there every day to service it and take out the trash and change the sheets every third day? Like, do I need to make him move rooms? Is that something that you should be able to pull my license for? Like, is there gray area? Is there stuff that could just be scratched off?
I think like that kind of stuff was more extreme, so the town had the power part. But I see both sides of it. I mean, I would be worried too if it was that easy. Well, without.
Here's the other scene. Okay, you've got this guy from Excel and he's paying on time, and Excel's, you know, they're not only paying 100, they're 150. They really want to stay a long time. What about the guy that's, you know, I'm only gonna stay 7 days, well, I gotta stay another 7 days, and I just got down on my luck, and you really wanna have some teeth to be able to say, sorry, buddy, you gotta go.
Well, if they're still paying.
Yeah, but if he's like a few days behind and but it catches up,
Yeah, that
a few days behind, you know, it's just erratic.
Yeah.
You know, it's just the other side of the coin.
Sure.
So
Well, not really necessarily for yours, but what about some of the other people? I mean, everybody operates different. It just seems a little different with what you have.
Franchise versus.
Yeah.
So how do you stop somebody from, if they're, do you make them pay every day, or do they say, I'm coming for 3 days and then they have to pay it the third day?
That depends on how.
So could that scenario happen where they're not paying and they're staying?
Not with me in particular, but I assume it could be potential.
I have, like, The hotel we took over in Colorado Springs had a lot of like move to meet homeless people. That was a big cleanup project too. We did have people that did that. So yes, it can happen, but you just don't let it happen. Like if someone can't, it's a hotel, you pay it from when you get there.
But I was gonna say,
And if
that's
you
where
can't
too, like,
pay it from when you get there, you don't stay. And if you can only pay for one night, you only get one night. And if you can't pay for one night.
Yeah, so they typically, they're gonna pay up front.
So it's not.
And if they extend, then they're gonna pay for however many days.
That's what I was saying, every hotel I've stayed, they ask for my credit card, so you have to kind of show you have, you know.
Means to be able to stay.
Right, yeah, and then at the end, then they charge it, you know, it's like, you put it on file, it's there, and then at the end of the stay, it gets charged.
Yeah.
So that's why I was curious about.
Well, but I suppose there's gotta be somebody who wants to pay in cash and doesn't have a credit card to put down any deposit. I mean, it
We
happens,
take a cash deposit of
Yeah.
$250, just like
So-
on a credit card, but,
you know,
but if they can't pay cash the next day, they're checking out.
they're out.
On the clock, see you later. Yeah, so, I mean, just little things that like, those questions, if you've never worked in a hotel, you don't know the answers to them. So ask us, let us give you some feedback and.
Actually, you guys can help us forge this thing.
See, I don't have any of these problems because I allow the drugs and the prostitutes. So we're doing fine. Continue.
As long as you pay taxes on
No, I'm kidding.
it.
I'm joking, I'm joking.
We know what kind of place it is.
thank you. Yeah.
Didn't wanna miss
We
out.
have more than we.
Our place looks beautiful.
So, no, so I appreciate where it came from. I just think we need to basically go paragraph by paragraph and either scribble out, maybe not say these are the specific workers, it's 28 days is long term. And it's not necessarily a construction, seasonal or whatever. I just worry about the liability for us. People are just happy to sue you for whatever
Oh,
reason
true.
possible. So just more general on these items.
It's cool that you guys are willing to work with us though.
Yeah.
That's the main thing too, so.
And time and
Maybe otherwise you guys
resources.
sue us.
What does this mean to us, time wise and employee wise, and who's gonna even look at it, and what are you gonna do with it? We're concerned about the privacy of that.
Makes sense with the names, because if I was staying, I don't know if I want,
I don't think.
I'm
we
always
leave it.
nervous enough as it is with just what we use my own name for and how it gets out there, it gets identity stuff and stuff, so. I
And
definitely
your license
respect
plate?
that. Yeah, all that stuff,
and
yeah,
how
because you
you-
guys track that to know who's staying there, it makes
We
sense.
do, but why, they're gonna wanna know why you need that information and.
Well, no, true,
after
I
the
mean, it's-
fact.
I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah, so-
100%.
What we might think about doing, my job is to be part of the conversation, but it's more to sort of say, okay, procedure-wise, kind of what are our 3 doors, all right? But what we might think about doing, based on what I've heard, is if we can get, and I made a lot of notes too, but it'd be helpful if I got yours. I think I've made notes on key points, but if we receive those, it might be useful for me to do a red line of the ordinance that reflects those changes and maybe some marginal comments to show where they came from. So it's sort of a working draft for the board and for you. And, you know, clearly that's one door, which is to, okay, let's dig into this, make adjustments, try to be as responsive as we can, understanding we're still gonna be in the hotel licensing business, that's door 1. Door 2 would be, okay, we're gonna put this whole ordinance on box and see if we still need it and kind of keep it. Maybe we do the red line, but hang on to it in the event things move well in the industry. That's great. We got it in our back pocket if things change. I'm not sure there's a door 3. Usually I have 3, but those are the, you know, you're either in and doing it, but working with the industry, or you're not.
Well, I could see your door 2 being a suspension, a further suspension of the licensing program. Or door 3 could be completely rescinding the ordinance.
Good for you.
Okay.
And I'll say on most of these topics, I think there's probably room. You know, if you remain in the hotel licensing business, door 1, door 1 version or another, there's room. I get it that the record keeping is of concern to you. I will say that that really emanated from our police department. We're gonna wanna talk to them about what their needs are there. I think there's probably more information than they need for their purposes, and that they really haven't had a voice on this here tonight.
But I think I kind of know where that was coming from, because us being a hotel that's right on I-70, it's very easy for somebody to get off the highway and get back on and disappear. Having the name and contact information was helpful.
So the question will be, what do you really need, Randy Williams, as opposed to what you'd like to have? I love and work with police officers every day of my career. And for them, you know, they love to have more, because we all would. But that's one arena I think that we can, among many, we can deal with. And I would also say that, you know, the town collects a lot of information. It's not that this is the first kind of information the town ever collects from private industry. And towns collect business license information, liquor license information, and we do manage it. You know, so it isn't a situation where this is the first time that the town has got information, and how secure is it? And I appreciate your asking, but I must tell you, the town has to and does collect a lot of information that it's then in charge of, and doesn't release under the Open Records Act if it's a confidential commercial information. That's, you know, there's a statute. So it's not like we're kind of unregulated there. I get the concern, but, you know, a liquor licensee that's got to show a lease and possession of the property gives us that lease. And because they need to, but then when I'm asked to release it, that lessee can ask that it's confidential commercial information, and we can deny, you know, releasing it. The point I'm trying to take way too long to make is, as usual, is that, you know, it's not the there's not a, okay, you can't collect any information because we can't trust you. You know, because we're in this business, you know, the town has to be able to do some of that. Where we meet in terms of how much information and how closely it's held and how much of it is stamped confidential, I think is a arena in which we can work. But I do want to check in with the marshal, just one second, to you know, to hear his perspective, because a large portion of that, here's the information we need, came from the police department, and I want to honor their concerns and yours at the same time.
Can I say something real quick?
Then it's Brittany's turn.
Yeah.
She's really patient.
I know, this little memo that I created, this was Randy's response. If we had to shut down the information that he really wanted, was that section right there.
Okay.
And it's more than what you guys, in our meeting before, even you had said, I don't want to release that, I don't want to release that, but this was from the whole ordinance, you know, that sheet that I sent to you guys, that last section was Randy's suggestion that he would be willing to only, you know, require that much. So I already know that from Randy.
Okay. All right.
So, and then that's just on people that 20 hours or more,
28 days or more.
just that's.
Just the long term.
That's
And
nice.
then you answer the question, the first question is, have you rented to anybody more than 28 days? Yes or no? If no, then you're done answering that report, that the report is done. But if it's yes, then further information.
I guess my only other comment was sort of made me think about it with yours. If they need to come in and find information on someone, we've collected all of that information, but if we're looking for somebody, Randy can come in and say, hey, do you have this tag at your hotel?
I figured you had some
Like,
sort
is
of.
there something in place that
Makes
allows
sense.
him, I'm sure there's a law, to request that information of us at any given point, so that kind of.
We have that information, it just isn't like, at least in our PMS, there's not like a print all guest information tag, so like mass.
Make the
Go
list.
on each individual business.
Well, I don't think it either, like, I don't think they're gonna check everybody's and every single thing just to see, we don't have that, the town doesn't have that kind of
No, but
time.
obviously, we're gonna wanna know if there's a felon staying at our place, and if he comes in and says, hey, do you have this? We're gonna look.
Yeah.
We're not hiding anything, it's just how much do you really need all the time, so.
True.
Amber, it sounded like you might have a comment or question?
I think with the reporting requirement, even with the reduction, I do have a comment about that, but I was wondering if you, when Jerry was talking, I was wondering if you guys collect any of like information from other industries, like apartments, short-term rentals, liquor licenses, marijuana.
Sure, every single license the town issues is based upon application with supporting information.
Right. I understand the business information about like the business, about the business, but about their customers, is it collected? Like their day-to-day customers? Or like, let's say someone buys 28 times at a liquor store. Does that trigger something for them to collect that information and report it to the police?
I see the analogy you're trying to make. Respectfully, I don't agree with it, because your analogy is, hey, if you're not collecting customer information from these other businesses, you can't from us. And my answer to that is, you collect the information that's relevant to your needs as the licensing authority. When you're a liquor licensing authority, you collect information on to be blunt, the criminal background, if any, of the owners, because they're holding the liquor license. So you collect information that's relevant to your job as a licensing entity. So here,
But a hotel is sorry to interrupt. The hotel is not a closely regulated industry, though.
Well, and that's not it doesn't have to be a closely regulated industry for the city, again, for the town to collect information that's relevant to the license. We collect information that's relevant to short-term rental license. We collect information relevant to business licenses, to restaurant licenses, to all of the various programs that the town has. I don't disagree, Amber, that we can work on what is relevant and what our real needs are. But where I disagree with you is that somehow guest information is off limits because the town doesn't collect it for other businesses. I think that's a false analogy, and I think it wastes our time because.
No, I think you misunderstand. I understand that we're required to collect information, and we already do. The part that is not regular is the fact that we have to pre-report it to the town versus there's no precedent for that. Like, we have to give you guys information about our business and our guests without any prompt. Like, there's no trigger for us to give you that information except for the fact that you just want to have it handy.
Well, I suspect actually that there's going to be a way to resolve that. I'm not sure the town needs that information ahead of time. And that I realize is one of your great objections. But what I keep saying is that this is an arena where I think there's room for us to work, unless we're going to say, by God, you can't make us do that at all. And so I'm more of a find a place in the middle kind of guy. And I think there's a spot. We haven't found it yet, but I think there's room for the board. There's really, as Lynette said, 3 doors.
I'd like to make a motion on door number 1.
Door number 1, which would be to direct staff to prepare a red line with comments from the industry for your further consideration, which may end up being, okay, we like that, but now we're going to take that and wait for a little longer, so it doesn't preclude door 2 or 3. Is that
Right, and
true?
yes.
Okay. I'll second.
I thought it was a work session, and we're,
No, we're still.
It's not really, I mean,
Good point, though.
well, what do you mean?
Jen, the meeting never was adjourned. It
Right.
says work session,
Okay,
but it's still an agenda item.
okay,
Even though it's characterized as work session, the board has
Well,
every
then,
power.
maybe we won't call it that in the future. then
We shouldn't
it's not
call that.
confusing.
It's misleading.
If it's part of the.
It's like a discussion and action.
Discussion.
Can I ask
But I'd like you guys to be able to see that copy too, so that we can continue to work on this and come to an agreement.
collaboration.
Yeah, exactly.
My last quick question, because I know you're trying to wrap it up, is
No, we're still
everyone
here for
turns
another hour.
to
So.
the page where the price is. Do you have a cost of this license? Is there, you said there's a fee,
curious.
like, everyone wants to know what it's gonna cost, like, flipping through the pages. do
Or
less than eight.
another license.
Yeah.
For the-
So it's been so long since, I thought we had sort of a tentative license cost in mind. And it was to basically cover staff time to process it.
So if your staff is gonna read through every reservation and all that
Well-
stuff, like.
No, it wasn't.
No,
It was
no.
it was to just put it on spreadsheets in order to save it for that purpose. It would be, so it was barely, the bare minimum was what we were looking at.
Was it
Right.
similar, would be similar to, what's the VRBO license?
Well, it's gonna be cheaper than that.
I mean, I know our business
I'm
license is
just
not
asking.
ridiculous, I'm just curious.
We had- we had-
Yeah, we had, but we can, when we discussed it, it was the bare minimum. It wasn't gonna, I don't know what our bare minimum was.
I'm just gonna ask.
It would just be for the administrative time in order to track this. Cause it does take time. It's a whole new responsibility for somebody.
Well, it's for them
Don't-
too. It is for them too, though, you know, and I'm probably speaking from the wrong side of the table, so.
Okay. The owl gets really confused if too many people are trying to talk at once and the sound goes completely unintelligible on the recording. So let's try not to talk over each other.
Well, I think what they're getting at, I mean, it's kind of simple. So if you look at what the VRBO costs, and it's less than that, do you guys even know what the VRBO costs? So that's being fair to them without.
Why don't, well, since I don't remember, you don't remember, it's been a long time. In the process of doing this red line edit, we can work on that as well. Yeah.
We'll talk about that too, okay?
Sorry.
That'll be part of the further
Good question,
discussion.
good question.
A final reading are ready to go into effect potentially by December 1st, we should have that answer, where it's almost October.
I know, I know.
Give me a break. I'm the guy who's got to write it. So lean on me that hard. I'll write the paper here. You give me your notes.
She might let you stay at her hotel room, you know, to drive all the way home to them.
It's on me to produce a draft. Sorry? No, I'm just not a guy who makes a lot of jokes because I just don't.
Yeah.
So all I'm telling you is there's a December deadline. I'm very aware of that deadline, as you are. I'll produce my red line as soon as I get your comments. It'll come back in front of the board as soon as we can get it in front of them. I suspect that if we're still talking and not quite there yet, by December, the board will kick it over for enough time to be able to make a reasonable decision. They already have once. So that's the best I can do, short of inventing a red line here by tomorrow for you, and I won't have that. But I'm doing the best.
Totally understand.
All right. We do have a motion, right?
Yes.
Was there a second?
Wait a second. So I'm gonna call a vote.
Who made it?
Mary
And then you
Rob.
seconded?
And Rob.
And what was the motion?
Door
Motion
number
for
one.
staff to prepare a red line of the ordinance based upon the industry comments and to be brought back to the board as soon as possible.
So it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? That motion passed.
Can I ask you what would be a fair time frame for you to feel comfortable, once we've come to that collaborative agreement for implementation, just to kind of give us a ballpark? Because you're like, December 1st, you know, 30 days, 60 days?
To start.
Once you knew exactly what you were going to be looking at, once we all said, okay, we can live with this serves our purpose, you can see that it's workable, doable.
Well, we don't want to rush anything, right?
No,
We
no,
want it to
no,
be
I'm
right.
not asking for a, you know, just like, not even a calendar date, I'm just saying, if we come
Just
to
30
that.
days.
30 days? Oh,
Something like that. is what we're
okay.
looking for.
I'm just kind of asking so that we have that idea too, because I don't think any of us want you to feel like this is
Punitive.
and breathing down your neck, yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, you know, kind of like I said, laundry and cooking facilities, if we have to do major capital improvements to buildings, that really depends on various permit process and
So you tell me, that makes sense.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, but one of those things too, and of course, it would be discussed, like Terry said, over online, but I mean, stuff like that, I mean, with the way the town's set up, you can, why couldn't we do that, I mean, it costs as part of the permit fee? Don't we inspect the VRBOs when they get a license? So I mean, it could be on a per each, you know, obviously unless it's something being new built, but you have an existing place, you know, if it falls 45 feet out or whatever, it could fall under that basic inspection, correct, Rick? I mean, I don't know, I don't know how the VRBO system works, so I don't know if it'd be something similar to that where it just gets inspected and.
I don't know, I think the question's difficult to answer. I think once we can come to terms,
Yeah, sure.
I think it'll be easier to answer that question. And because that may play in part of how we get there. You know, like, if we come to the point where we're saying, as long as it's on site, then I don't think that's an issue of your compliance to this, you know? But if it comes down to 40 feet, that now is compliance, and that may take you 6 months in order to have the, you know, whatever the money's ready, the funds for to do that. So I don't know, I think it really just comes down to how we land this funding.
Yes. And then for me, we're already doing all this stuff, so to report it, I could do it within a month. But given that from today until potential implementation of 2 months, well, where do I budget the fee? Where do I budget the manpower? So, you know, am I gonna be ready by December 1st? I don't know. But
And
once it goes.
maybe package all of these concerns that you've got as we move forward, because,
Yeah.
you know, we're asking for feedback from you, the industry.
So it's a hard thing to answer, so if it happened December 1st, sure, I can report the
New
next
question,
day.
new question,
Yeah.
new question.
Yeah.
So, Amber, does that work for you?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Remember, you guys require a solution to help solve a problem that we want to have.
We did hostile problem.
All right.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, let's start with your report, Rick.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions on my administrator's report or task list? So I guess I'll just go through the discussion dates, since that's things that are coming up, just make sure we're all. So we've already discussed the Gateway Commercial District, and because it was brought back tonight, we have direction now to move forward, so that's good. Also, strategic plan retreat, I'm waiting for Mark Collins to send the report detailing our discussion and direction moving forward. And also my goals that I submitted to you will perhaps change because of how that falls out. So we'll kind of see what our priorities are from there, and that'll be listed. Today we did the long-term stay, so we discussed that. October 3rd, it's an alternative Tuesday. Discussion regarding possible short-term rental amendments. I guess we chose that just for Jerry and I to have more time to think through those things. And I do have a list of questions, I won't read them now, but these are the ones that I've been tracking, that's been brought to my attention about short-term rentals. November 14th, that is when the representatives, Amy Saxon and a guest from that committee is going to be coming to share about the multi-jurisdictional housing authority and all it entails as far as the membership discussions and so forth. There'll be numbers that they're going to be talking to us about, what options that they're thinking through, what they're expecting municipalities to pay. So they're working through that now, but they'll be ready to discuss that then. Add to regular board discussion, just millings. I think we've already discussed that, so I can take that off. And then we will talk about the Workforce Support Commission during the budget meeting. That's where it really falls. And so that's where that is. You have this, and so does anybody have any questions about any other details that I have on this?
No.
So are we meeting next week on the 3rd, or are we gonna push it back and do it on the 10th?
Well, we had discussed the last time on the 3rd.
So
I'm just confirming,
my thought was to do it on the short-term rentals. I'm imagining will be a more lengthy discussion because we've got short-term rental owners who have, requested, I mean, I'm envisioning more of an actual work session. So we'd be working through their comments, and trying to tack it onto the 10th, which we're also starting our, draft budget work sessions after the regular meetings.
So are we inviting short-term rental owners?
Well, it's a meeting, it's an open meeting. And we're trying to capture all of their requests for how to change this.
Well, I know, but are we specifically putting it out to them because rather than just having them watch the, are we making some kind of a notification? Because I would hate to, I agree we need to discuss this, but I don't want us to have this consensus of agreement and then go through this multi-month period, which we still may, if they're then given an opportunity to talk. So I guess, is the word going out to short-term rental owners that we're having a special meeting?
We can send that out to all the short-term.
Well, I mean, I'd rather have the storm come in, and so we can sift through this all. We know it's gonna be a touchy subject, so, thank you.
I agree. I had kind of envisioned that there would be public involvement.
Okay.
Okay, I put in there, we'll send a letter out to all the short-term rental owners. I mean, I don't want to go through all this because it's a lot.
We read it.
I know, I think you read it. And I know that, I did update the task list. And so some of that is kind of repetitive because it's already in my admin report. But the intention is to try to keep that updated as we're moving forward.
And just two things on, the task list. Under affordable housing, which is item number 12. Just want to let the board know that we were turned down for the land banking, application that we put in. At this stage, there will be future rounds of grant funding that comes available. We can apply again. And I also learned at my Dr. Cog meeting that the land banking funds can be used for acquiring and preserving existing affordable housing. So there could be the potential for using it for that. Don't know if that, would rank us higher on the approval scale or not, but, just throwing it out there. It opens up our options. And then the hire new assistant town administrator position, instead of September 2nd.
Especially September 27th.
Yes, which
So
is
I
tomorrow.
missed a 7, which is tomorrow. And we have 3 candidates. So super excited and,
So Dwayne and I, we're super excited.
it's gonna be fun. Okay, and I kept some of the other things that were in the packet, just putting back in here. Clear Creek County Community Town Halls, the 14th was, in Georgetown. The 28th will be at the health clinic in Idaho Springs. And so if you want to hear more about their updates and budgets and everything, I encourage you to go. And they're gonna talk about the chat discussion as well for that one.
And there is a Zoom link if you want to do it remotely.
And then I just want to kind of give some code enforcement updates, just this real quickly. I did speak to Dwayne Hydrick at 404 7th Street, which is just right over here. He did take down the rock wall, and I sent pictures showing that it does still show the root ball of the trees that's basically right on the line. So he has removed as we informed him to. The Metro District, this is still more information. Deanna asked that we keep this in the packet, so I put this back in there. That's 27th, that's tomorrow night at 6:30. They're having a meeting
in Idaho Springs, and so there's a flyer about that.
That is also available by Zoom.
Thank you. And then lastly, I think we kind of briefly touched on it, but Cindy Neely has kind of been helping me. She has special projects for us, but she's been helping coordinate the rock wall that's going up Loop Drive. There's some massive cracks going up there. And it was really concerning for Mark Grable as he is concerned because there was a big rock fall a few years back before I was here. Some of you guys can remember that. They're very scared and paranoid that that's gonna happen again. And if it does, it could really negatively impact their business. And that's a major asset to the town and it would negatively impact the whole town. So they've asked if we would contact a professional to do an assessment to look at this for the whole area. Georgetown does have responsibility up to a certain point. I attached a map that kind of shows the town line. So what they're gonna do, and Mark said the same thing, we need to just assess the whole rock wall. And then we know which sides will be responsible for. However, the person I did look at and said, it's not as bad as you think. So that was, even without doing his professional thorough analysis, he just said, I'll do it. However, it's not as bad as what it is, what you think. So that was good news, but we're in the process of getting that analysis. And I think that's all of my reports.
Okay, thank you. And then I have a real quick one on the Wildland Partners meeting that I attended this morning. Basically, it was, where are we on our review of and revision of the county's CWPP, which is Community Wildfire Protection Plan, and then the towns will do their own. So they're gonna throw out a survey. They're editing the survey that they put out in 2017 or so. We'll start public meetings just to get people engaged and thinking about it. There will be 3 public meetings. They're thinking November, December, and January. Work on revisions to the plans after that last meeting, and then get the revisions done and have the CWPPs ready to sign in May so that they can be implemented. It helps us for grant applications for wildfire mitigation, et cetera. So, and the other really important, well, 2 other important things, the Christmas tree program, they're gonna do it again. The Forest Service is on board. And we're hoping that this year we can spread it out and not just have it, figure out how to do it on days other than Christmas market days, so that, you know, we're capturing more people. There's plenty of trees up there. They can either look for their own, or they, Jeremy and his crew, when they're doing their thinning and mitigation, they're gonna actually tie some kind of colored ribbon on the ones that they spot that would be great Christmas trees, and people can just say, oh, yeah, I like that one, it's got a ribbon on it. And so we'll figure out that, but they definitely wanna do that as part of their program, and the Forest Service is on board because we haven't really had any sort of that available in this area in many, many years. So, and the other was the guy who is the temporary, and I'm sorry, I forget his name, but he is the temporary district ranger for this district. And he said, just briefed us on what would happen if the government ends up shutting down and what happens to their programs. They will have essential personnel stay on duty. Most everybody gets sent home, and they will continue to do wildfire mitigation with these essential personnel. But if they needed a helicopter for a wildland fire, they would not have it because those folks will be grounded. So unfortunately, so we're hoping None or as short as possible. So that's all I had for that report. Anybody have anything else? Okay. So we move on to,
Dwayne
has plenty to read
as
a motion,
yes.
I move to go into executive session under CRS 24-6-402 for a conference with the town manager and town attorney for a personal matter, conduct the evaluation of the town administrator. I further move to return to the open meeting for the purpose of taking any actions deemed necessary.
okay.
Second.
Okay, Mary seconds it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.